What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty. Join my Discord if you want to chat and share your thoughts, the link is in the description. 6MB Chapter 161 New Mission. Just when Luffy was immersed in the shadows and crying bitterly. Suddenly the hull of the ship shook, the water rolled up, and waves splashed in all directions. Luffy and the others, who have been sailing on the sea for many years, are very familiar with this kind of unusual shaking. Needless to say, there must be some Poseidon type causing trouble nearby. Zoro held Yukishiro and third-generation Kitetsu tightly, tiptoed a little, landed lightly on the mast, and said calmly, "Leave it to me to solve it." "No, leave it to me." Luffy stood up angrily, staring at the rolling sea water ahead. "I'm in a bad mood, and now you're bothering me. Let's see if I don't beat it flat." As he spoke, the seawater rolled more violently, and a huge Poseidon poked out its huge head, a bit like a bull's head, a bit like a hippopotamus. The head alone is more than 10 meters tall, and the two eyes are like two huge discs. They look down at the Wanlianian No as if they're thinking about where to start. Luffy became more and more angry. After standing up, he stamped his feet suddenly, twisted his right arm like a hemp rope that had been twisted a dozen times, and then shouted, "Gong mang gong, roundhouse." With a punch, the entire right arm seemed to be extending endlessly, and a sound of breaking through the air was heard. The fist was packed with overbearing power, and it rotated at high speed and hit the Poseidon's neck. The unknown Poseidon let out a loud scream, with a sound like a bell, and its head flew backwards like a mountain. At the same time, a mermaid and a starfish were spit out from the mouth of this Poseidon. Hearing the commotion outside, Sanji just walked out and wanted to curse a few words. He was hit by a mermaid falling from the sky. He rolled several times on the deck with the mermaid in his arms before he stopped. Another starfish that fell down landed steadily on the deck, watching everyone warily. Sanji was dizzy when he saw that he was holding a mermaid. He immediately became excited, pouted, and was about to kiss her. "Ah!" The mermaid screamed and slapped Sanji, leaving a red palm mark on Sanji's face. Sanji wasn't angry either, he just looked at the green-haired mermaid in front of him with a silly smile. At the same time, everyone on the boat was looking at them, curious as to why the mermaid and starfish escaped from the mouth of the Poseidon. Afterwards, after a brief introduction by the green-haired mermaid, Sanji and Nami also knew the general cause and effect. The mermaid's name is Kemi, and the starfish is her master Papago. When he saw Luffy in front of the mermaid Kemi, he immediately forgot about the lowering of the bounty. He excitedly pushed away everyone and walked forward, asking curiously, "Advertisement, Kemi. Do mermaids poop?" Kemi smiled slightly and then said, "If you poop." Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted rudely and seriously by Sanji. Can't poop. How can a mermaid poop?" In the first half of the Grand Line, there is a windless zone somewhere. The seawater is boiling, and from time to time, a thick golden sword energy will break through the water surface from the depths of the seabed, and shoot sharply into the sky. After 1 month in a row, this place has long become a forbidden place for Poseidon. Not only the Poseidon species that originally inhabited the nearby waters stayed away, but also few seagulls passed by above the white clouds, for fear of damaging the pondfish and suffering undue disaster. Deep in the seabed, Cheng Cheng continued to release his sword energy with all his strength for 15 minutes. His blonde hair was floating, and blue lightning flashed like filaments around him, illuminating the originally dark seabed into golden yellow. In the past month or so, Cheng Cheng practiced the sea-cutting and sky-opening sword moves deep under the sea during the day. He would only teleport back to Cayenne at night after he was exhausted. When he arrived at Cayenne, he did not go into the bedroom to sleep. Instead, he and Kosha sat cross-legged under the Phantom Beast spirit tree, letting the little golden light falling from the spirit tree fall on him. After more than a month of hard work, Cheng Cheng finally succeeded in extending the Super Saiyan state. Now even if the sword move skill is released at full strength, it can last for at least 15 minutes. After becoming a real man for 15 minutes, Cheng Cheng wanted to increase the time limit, but no matter what, he couldn't break the 15-minute bottleneck. Today is Cheng Cheng's last attempt. If he still can't make a breakthrough in time, then he will have no choice but to give up and continue to extend the time. Feeling that the energy in his body was rapidly draining, Cheng Cheng gritted his teeth and all the energy in his body poured out. The golden sword energy on Zhenhai's sword surged and he flicked his wrist. A golden sword energy that was hundreds of meters long poured out instantly. The sea surface was churning, the entire seawater was swaying gently, and in an instant, the water surface split hundreds of meters. The golden sword energy broke through the water and went straight into the sky. White clouds like cotton candy floated leisurely above it, splitting into two halves with clear distinctions. After the sword was struck with all his strength, Cheng Cheng's hair at the bottom of the sea also returned to silvery white, his toes moved slightly, and he rose towards the sea surface. After rising to the sea surface, Cheng Cheng put away the sea-suppressing sword, opened his arms and let his body float on the sea surface, looking up at the white clouds above his head. Because there is no wind zone here, the sea is gentle, windless and waveless, and the white clouds are leisurely. After closing your eyes, the world is silent. Advertisement. It's like time has stopped at this moment, and the whole world has paused. Cheng Cheng looked at the sky, the seawater floating up and down on his face. Feeling the unique coldness of the seawater, he murmured, "I really want to die here." Then he raised the corners of his mouth and smiled self-deprecatingly. "But there are still so many great beauties waiting for me in this world, but I can't stop here. At least I have to stay in the Empress bathhouse, right? When the time comes, you and the Empress will rub each other's backs, talk about life, and have an in-depth exchange with each other. This is the life that should be lived. Cheng Cheng sighed. System, start the next mission. Open black lens bracket as you command, sir. Close black lens bracket, mission check-in location, Sabo Island number 1, auction house. Close black lens bracket. Calculating the time, it seems that Luffy and the others will soon arrive at the Sabo Islands. System, teleport back to Cayenne first. I'll make arrangements before setting off. Open black lens bracket as you command, sir. Close black lens bracket soon. Cheng Cheng appeared on the rooftop of Cayenne. Kosha, who was pumping his fists like a sudden storm, asked with a surprised look on his face. Why did you come back so early today? In the past, the Imperial Master would not come back before night. Cheng Cheng went to pour a glass of wine first. Looking at General Thanos, who was getting more and more amazing with his punches, Cheng Cheng was also shocked. If General Thanos were to face Kizaru now, not only would he be able to defeat him, at least he wouldn't be as helpless as he was last time. Cheng Cheng shook Erlang's legs and said softly, the hard training is over, and I have to go to the Sabo Islands next. This time I won't be back soon, so I have to leave this Phantom Beast spirit tree to you. Kosha said as he should. Don't worry, the people are here and the trees are here. Cheng Cheng smiled and turned his head to look at the Phantom Beast spirit tree, which was now a little thicker, with more lush branches and leaves. There are many Phantom Beast devil fruits cultivated in more than a month. Currently, there are only 3 or 4 people in the first team and the second team each who have not eaten the devil fruit. The others, except for the former agents of Baroque Company, have become all members of the Fantasy Beast species. Cheng Cheng drank down the wine in his hand. The wine glass lightly hit the table, making a crisp and sweet sound. System, turn on the transmission. Open black lens bracket as you command, sir. Close black lens bracket. Chapter 162 Bubble Car in Sha Chi Sabo Islands. In the sky full of bubbles, a golden light flashed, as if a door to the void opened in the sky. In the golden light, Cheng Cheng was severely thrown out by the huge pulling force. Cheng Cheng, who had already been extremely experienced in this kind of thing, quickly stabilized his body high in the air. Cheng Cheng overlooked the entire Sabo Islands. There are countless transparent bubbles rising slowly below, as they rise to the top of the head. Boom! A crisp sound exploded in my ears. Although the sound of countless bubbles exploding was irregular, to Cheng Cheng's ears it was an unusual relief and made him feel happy both physically and mentally. The Sabo Islands are located near the marine headquarters, in front of the Red Continent. It is said to be an island, but it is actually the roots of the world's largest mangrove, Archivan mangrove. Since the roots of the tree are always exposed on the water, this island is formed. The entire island is composed of 79 trees, each with a number, and each tree has towns and facilities, forming the Sabo Islands. Cheng Cheng did not use moonwalk next, but directly stepped on the slowly rising bubbles and jumped to the ground lightly. After landing on the ground, Cheng Cheng looked up and saw a huge number 44 carved on the thick tree in front of him. Sure enough, it is impossible for this Sun Tzu system to get it right in one step. The purpose of his coming to the Sabo Islands was not only to complete the system task, but also to meet someone. That man could stir up the entire ocean when he was young, but now he is an ordinary coder when he is old. Walking on the grass of the island not only refreshed the air, but also put Cheng Cheng in a good mood. There was resinous mucus secreted under his feet. Walking on it was like walking on mud, which made him very uncomfortable and even made him feel uncomfortable, a little disgusting. It is precisely these resin slimes that allow a steady stream of bubbles to form on the island. Advertisement Cheng Cheng endured the uncomfortable feeling and continued to move forward. Soon a lively town appeared ahead, with people coming and going, bustling with people, and roadside stalls and shops all selling hard to attract the attention of pedestrians. At a glance, most of them are specialties here, as well as some unique fruits. But the most popular items are the various means of transportation made of bubbles. Cheng Cheng, who was curious in his heart, couldn't help but take a second look. It was really magical. The middle-aged bearded man opposite was very rough-looking. When he saw Cheng Cheng's eyes, he immediately understood that he was definitely an outsider. The middle-aged shop owner immediately said flatteringly, "White-haired guy. Come and take a look, all the bubble cars in our store are of high quality and low price. Buying one is absolutely super convenient and very cost-effective." Cheng Cheng walked over and took a picture of a bubble car that resembled a motorcycle. Its appearance was not much different from that of a motorcycle, except that its 2 wheels turned into transparent bubbles and the entire body was suspended in the air. He asked with a faint smile, "How much does it cost?" The middle-aged shop owner's smile became even brighter. He rubbed his hands and said, "It's not much, the original price is 10,000 belly, but I think I sincerely want it, so I will give you a real price." One price, 8,000 belly. Cheng Cheng looked calm, took out a thick stack of Baileys, placed it in front of the boss, and said with a cheerful smile, "I bought it." The middle-aged shop owner had never encountered such a generous scapegoat. He was so excited that he immediately reached for the thick stack of Baileys. Suddenly, a fair and slender hand appeared, grabbing the money first, and then quickly stuffed it into Cheng Cheng's hand again. The owner of this hand was a slender and graceful female nurse. At this moment, she looked at the shop owner with an angry face and said to Cheng Cheng angrily, "Don't buy it. If you buy it, you will be fooled. I think you are a foreigner. Once you leave the Sabo Islands, the bubbles will explode, and your bubble motorcycle will be useless. You can rent it, which is more cost-effective." The middle-aged store owner is so depressed that even the cooked duck can fly away. He clenched his fists and glared at the beautiful female nurse, as if he wanted to memorize her appearance and then take care of her. He explained with a smile on his face. This little girl doesn't understand. What if this guy wants to live here for a long time? If you ask around, the quality of the bubble cars in our store is absolutely unparalleled. Of course Cheng Cheng knew this, but now he really didn't care much about the 12,000 yuan. If he rented it, he had to pay it back, which was quite troublesome, so he simply bought it. Advertisement. Cheng Cheng smiled and said, "Thank you, beauty, it's okay, we're not short of money." The beautiful female nurse became even more angry. She stamped her feet hard and said, "What a fool. You can be fooled if you want. I have to go to work and I'm too lazy to pay attention to you. If I continue to delay, I will be late." After saying that, the plump and beautiful nurse trotted away. He is really a big, kind and enthusiastic angel in white. Cheng Cheng chuckled and handed the money to the shopkeeper again. When the shopkeeper's face was full of joy, he stopped in midair and said calmly, "Here is 10,000 Baileys, and I will continue to buy bubble cars, but we are all grown-ups, let's not be as knowledgeable as a little nurse, don't you think so?" How could a middle-aged store owner not understand what Cheng Cheng meant? Looking at the recovered business, he had a sincere smile on his face, patted his chest and said, "No way, little brother, don't worry. Just because of your arrogance, if the bubble is broken or damaged in the future, I will repair it for you for free." Cheng Cheng smiled and agreed, got on the bubble bike and left. After a period of unfamiliarity at first, he found that there was not much difference from riding an electric bike before, and he quickly got used to it. Then he bought a simple map and rode a bubble car all the way to island number 13. The speed of the bubble car was not too slow, and Cheng Cheng was not in a hurry. He admired the towering trees and drove slowly without stepping on the resin slime on the ground, which made Cheng Cheng feel a lot better. Not long after, I saw a small bar high above the ground. The front door was empty and there were no customers. Shaki is so casual. If anyone else had run this small bar with a poor business, it would have gone bankrupt long ago. Cheng Cheng smiled slightly, parked the bubble car and opened the door directly. After entering, it turned out to be empty without a single customer. There was only a short-haired proprietress with black hair whose age could not be determined. She was wiping the cup with a clean white cloth while holding a cigarette in the corner of her mouth with a calm expression. Cheng Cheng sat down directly in front of the bar and said with a smile, "Shaky, bring me the best and most expensive wine." The bar owner's expression was condensed. She didn't go to get the drink, but looked straight at Cheng Cheng. The proprietress Sha Chi was chased by Garp when she was a pirate 40 years ago. She later retired and ran a bar on the Sabo Islands. The bar itself had no intention of making money, it was just a way for her to pass the time out of boredom and obtain information. As soon as Cheng Cheng walked in, Sha Chi discovered the powerful power contained in this white-haired young man. And the most important thing is that there has never been any news about this young man in his intelligence system, which makes Sha Chi's curiosity greatly increased. Advertisement. Chapter 163. Wine glass for Jade bottle. Sha Chi had also secretly observed the other so-called supernova pirates of the evil generation. Although they were also very powerful, they were not a threat to her who was used to seeing big winds and waves. But she felt a real fatal threat from this white-haired young man, as if she was not a person in front of her, but a volcano that was ready to explode. Once it erupted, the entire Sabo Islands would fall. But Sha Chi laughed at himself again. How could it be possible? This young man looks young. This must be an illusion. Did he drink fake wine just now? Cheng Cheng poked his head and teased. "What's going on? Are you attracted to me? But if Shaki you were 40 years younger, I might still consider it." The landlady just came over. Although she was still puzzled, her face had returned to a calm smile, and she said, "I have a lot of good wine here. Whiskey, wine, and champagne are all fine wines. However, there is an unwritten rule in my store. Customers who come here to drink for the first time can get a free bottle of wine as long as they report their name, and they can choose at will." Cheng Cheng's expression condensed. He narrowed his eyes, and looked at the bar owner's wife expressionlessly. At the same time, his right hand slowly reached behind his back to hold the Zhenhai sword. Bang! A loud noise. The two wooden doors at the entrance of the bar were slammed shut by a strong wind that came from nowhere. The air suddenly became oppressive. The originally empty bar added a bit of a chilling atmosphere. The short-haired boss lady didn't show any fear at all. She just smoked slowly, and the white smoke rose slowly and irregularly. Although she was not as magnificent as Pluton Rayleigh in her life, she was still someone who had experienced storms. For her, if she angered this young man, the worst result would be to demolish her own tavern. It's just another experience of escaping for one's life. As for killing herself, she asked herself if she still had a way to escape. Cheng Cheng sneered. "When you come in to drink, you need to know the names of the guests? Are you a tavern or an intelligence base?" Sha Chi was not afraid at all and said calmly, "Of course the customer can choose not to tell. Is this just a small benefit of the store? Or is there a big taboo on your name, brother, and you can't tell others?" The sunlight outside the window shone on Cheng Cheng's back, and the sword light reflected by the Zhenhai sword made the entire tavern filled with sword energy. Cheng Cheng glared suddenly, gritted his teeth and asked, "Shaky, you really don't know who I am? Think about it carefully." Advertisement. The landlady just shook her head slightly, and at the same time she was ready to take action secretly. Snapped. Cheng Cheng took out the Zhenhai sword and placed it heavily on the bar. The wine bottles on the bar were shaking slightly, making a crisp and sweet sound. The proprietress Sha Chi's eyes widened immediately, with a look of disbelief on her face. She looked at the somewhat familiar broadsword. and there were 2 words on the sword that she had carved with her own hands. Zhenhai. Then she looked at the angry white-haired young man in front of her, and the appearance of the little brat in her memory slowly reappeared. Puff. Shao-Chi smiled so brightly that he leaned forward and backward, laughing until tears flowed out. She pointed at Cheng Cheng's nose and kept laughing. Little Cheng Cheng, I really didn't expect it was you. Come, let me take a good look at you. I haven't seen you for so many years. You have really turned into a handsome guy. As she spoke, the landlady stretched out her hand to knead Cheng Cheng's face and kept rubbing it in her palms. Cheng Cheng blushed slightly and pretended to be angry. We haven't seen each other for so many years, but I always remember you, Shaki, but someone else doesn't remember me. Shao-Chi laughed loudly. Little Cheng Cheng, you have become too handsome. Besides, if you dared to tease you, Shaki, as soon as you enter the door, how can I associate you with the little brat who blushed every time he spoke? Wait, Shaki will bring you the best wine. Cheng Cheng smiled helplessly, thinking a lot in his heart. When he was a child, when he first followed Garp to the Marine headquarters, out of curiosity, he came to visit the Sabo Islands alone. He often played at the number 33 amusement park all day long and didn't go back until dark. Later, one day, his sea tower stone broadsword was discovered by a sharp-eyed pirate. He blocked the alone Cheng Cheng at the entrance of the amusement park, beat him up and took away the sea tower stone broadsword. Then the Zhenhai sword was taken to the auction house for auction, and happened to be bought by Shao-Chi at a high price of 9 million belly. Advertisement at that time, the young Cheng Cheng did not dare to break into the auction house. He just squatted at the door of the auction house and waited to see who bought the Zhenhai sword. He thought that when he returned, he would let Garp lead his army to kill him first. The group of pirates then destroyed the auction house and then went to find the buyer to get the sword. But Cheng Cheng himself didn't expect that after Shao-Chi knew that the sword belonged to him, he directly returned the sword to him, and also took him to teach the pirates a lesson. Then Shao-Chi asked about the name of the broadsword. He first praised it, and then carved the 2 small characters, Zhenhai, on the sword. Praising the name of the sword is not vulgar. From then on, Cheng Cheng never left the Marine headquarters. He concentrated on practicing swordsmanship at the Marine headquarters and only pursued becoming stronger. The proprietress Shao-Chi poured a glass of wine, added 2 ice cubes, placed it in front of Cheng Cheng and said with emotion. Calculating the time, it must be almost 10 years. When I first met you, you were only so young. Cheng Cheng chuckled, took out a small and exquisite jade bottle, and pushed it in front of Shaki. This contains good things for beauty and beauty. When you drink water, you can pour a drop of it into it to repay Shaki for your kindness. Shao-Chi put the small jade bottle in his hand and looked at it carefully. He couldn't see anything special. He joked. Xiao Chengcheng, you are too stingy. Shaki bought you such a big drink. That's why you gave him such a big drink. Vile. Cheng Cheng said helplessly. Shaki, please stop being greedy. Even 100 million belly can't buy the things here. Shaki smiled slightly and stuffed the small jade bottle directly into his chest. What's the purpose of coming here this time? It's been 10 years since you disappeared, and you've gone from a silly boy to such a powerful person. Currently, the Sabo Islands are turbulent. Pirates from all walks of life have gathered on the island. Even the most famous Black Justice pirates have appeared on the island. I don't believe that you have no purpose in coming. My aunt is a few years older than you and knows more things than you. If you have anything you want to ask, just ask. Cheng Cheng took a sip of wine and asked no longer politely. Where's Uncle Rayleigh? I'll discuss something with him. Sha Qiu complained. Look, I knew you didn't come here specifically to see me. Cheng Cheng chuckled and handed the proprietress 3 fairy beans again. This is the holy medicine for healing. One can save your life. Sha Qi stopped embarrassing Cheng Cheng and said softly. He is wandering around in some amusement park to see the girl. You have to wait for him for a while. Cheng Cheng instantly understood that since he was not in the tavern, it was possible that Uncle Rayleigh had sold himself out through gambling and was being held in the prison at the auction house, waiting to be auctioned off. What is a free, comfortable and unrestrained life? Uncle Rayleigh, you really live a transparent life. Chapter 164 Tianlong people next. Cheng Cheng chatted with Shaki for a few more words, asked for a few glasses of wine, and then said goodbye to Shaki, riding his bubble motorcycle alone and leisurely heading to island number 1. Before leaving, Shaki, as an informant, gave Cheng Cheng a few more words. It's not peaceful on the island right now. It's fine if others mess with it, but it's best not to mess with the Black Justice pirates. You may not know about those people. Almost all of them are Phantom Beast ability users, and they are so powerful that even in the New World, they are able to separate themselves. After hearing this, Cheng Cheng just smiled mysteriously and did not explain anything. While enjoying the scenery on the road, riding a bubble car, to be honest, riding a bicycle and riding a somersault cloud are 2 completely different driving experiences. Both are comfortable, but each has its own merits. Soon, Cheng Cheng passed by island number 24 and stopped when he saw the movement ahead. In front of the street, a group of people slowly walked through the street again. The originally lively street suddenly became quiet. Everyone knelt down on both sides of the street, not daring to breathe out, and the air suddenly became quiet. Everyone lowered their heads and looked at the ground in fear. Walking at the forefront is a world noble Draco wearing a resin bubble on his head. In order to distinguish him from the air that ordinary people breathe, all Dracos will wear a resin bubble. This Tianlong man, who was as fat as a pig, had extremely thick lips. When the mucus flowed to the corner of his mouth covered with stubble, he knew to suck hard to avoid getting the unpleasant mucus. He is Saint Charlos, a member of the world noble Draco. At this moment, he is sitting on a muscular male slave. There is an iron chain around the slave's neck and he is holding it casually in his hand. There is a button on the iron chain. Press the button, and the shackles at the slave's neck will explode instantly, with enough power to kill anyone. Although the middle-aged man was exhausted, he did not dare to stop at all. If he stopped, he might die. Behind Saint Charlos was a tall butler wearing a black suit with a respectful expression. Next to them were two tall and slender young women with two iron chains around their necks. Although they were not being led like dogs, their expressions were dull and they had no idea of escaping. Behind them came three knights in shining armor, whose faces could not be seen clearly with their helmets on. They held spears and made a dull sound with every step they took. They were solemn and majestic. These three knights all knew that even without their own protection, no one would dare to harm this world noble, but since this was the order of the celestial dragons, they, the original elites of the Marines, did not dare to disobey it at all. Advertisement. Saint Charlos sniffed hard, stuck out his tongue and licked the ice cream in his hand, and muttered, "Shalulia Palace and my father have abandoned me. Where have they gone, and they won't take me to play with them?" The tall butler immediately reported respectfully, "I have their final destination in hand, please rest assured." Charlos screamed, then suddenly became furious, raised his foot and kicked the man-slave below on the head, cursing, "It's all your fault. You are as slow as a turtle, and you are still shaking so much, you are such a waste." Suddenly his expression changed, and he saw two doctors carrying a stretcher and a female nurse holding a sling bottle hurriedly running over in front of the street. Saint Charlos was instantly furious and reprimanded, "Stop! How dare you, a mere human being, dare to move in front of me?" His fat, pig-like figure rolled awkwardly to the ground and slowly walked towards the female nurse. The doctor, who was eager to save people, felt his heart tighten, and cold sweat flowed from his forehead. He usually knew this rule, but today he was so anxious that he didn't notice the Tianlong people over there for a moment. He immediately knelt down and said with trembling fear, I'm sorry, please let us go. He is a patient with severe hemorrhage. If he is late for a second, he may bleed to death. The hospital is just ahead, arriving soon." The patient on the stretcher was covered in blood, with only the last trace of consciousness left. After seeing the Tianlong people, his breathing began to quicken. Saint Charles sneered, "Really? This is not possible. I have to send him on his way quickly." The doctors' and nurses' expressions changed drastically, and they were panicked. Saint Charles suddenly kicked the patient's chest where he was bleeding the most, knocking over the entire stretcher. The two male doctors and female nurses all fell to the ground. The people kneeling on the street around him lowered their heads even more, fearing that the world noble's anger would spread to them. Cheng Cheng in the distance just looked at him coldly and was not in a hurry to take action. He had not completed the system task yet. It would be easy to kill this Tianlong man, but once he was killed and General Marine was attracted now, it would be difficult to have time. System task completed. It seems that we have to hurry up and kill this Tianlong when the system task is completed. But at this moment, the more Cheng Cheng looked at the female nurse, the more familiar she became, and suddenly he remembered, wasn't this the female nurse he met when he was buying a bubble car? It seems that this matter cannot be ignored. Advertisement. Cheng Cheng sighed and quietly took a step forward. Saint Charlos asked coldly, "Compared with my rules or the lives of untouchables, which one is more important?" The steward bowed and answered without hesitation, "There are celestial beings and untouchables." The Tianlong man nodded with satisfaction, and then glanced at the female nurse squatting on the ground to take care of the patient, with a graceful figure. His eyes widened, he walked over to the female nurse, sniffed hard, stared at the female nurse closely, looked up and down for a while and praised. "It's really the best. Not bad, I'll reward you with being my wife." The female nurse's expression changed drastically. Before she could refuse, the housekeeper in black immediately said respectfully, "Yes, I will immediately go through the procedures for the 13th madam to move into the Holy Land." Charles Saint added, "I'm tired of playing with wives number 1 to 5. Let them continue to be untouchables, or you can play with them, as long as they don't appear in front of me." The butler in black responded, "Okay, I'll deal with it immediately." Only then did the graceful and plump female nurse have the chance to speak, and said in panic, "Please wait a moment, I already have a fiancé." As soon as he finished speaking, a handsome man rushed out from the street and begged, "That's my fiancé." The celestial dragon Saint Charlos sneered, "And there was another one who was not afraid of death and was shaking in front of me." This time he took out the pistol from his waist without hesitation, pointed it at this unruly man, moved his index finger slightly, and pulled the trigger. Boom! There was a harsh sound, bullets whizzed out, and a burst of white smoke came from the muzzle, filled with a faint smell of gunpowder. The people kneeling on the street became more and more silent, mourning in their hearts for the young unmarried couple. However, at this critical moment, a golden cloud directly carried the man away from the place. The originally fatal bullet hit the wall behind and exploded. Chapter 165. Shake people. Everyone looked at the rapidly rising golden clouds in surprise and quickly disappeared into the distant sky. Saint Charles the Dragon did not stop there, but fired several more bullets into the air until all the bullets were fired, but the escaping man was unscathed. Saint Charlos was furious and ordered, "Check it for me. No matter who this golden cloud is, I will kill him. No, catch him back for me and I will torture him to death." The butler in black immediately said, "Yes, send someone to investigate immediately." The other pirates who were kneeling on the ground and were not weak in strength all raised their heads and looked around, trying to see which hero had taken action and dared to interfere in the affairs of the celestial dragons regardless of life or death. The pink-haired Captain Bonnie, who was kneeling aside, cursed in a low voice. "Who the hell are you? If you dare to offend General Marine, everyone will die together." The young female nurse finally breathed a sigh of relief. Her tense body could no longer support her and she fell to the ground, her figure becoming more plump and moving. She looked at a golden cloud that had flown away with gratitude, and murmured, just stay alive, Tony, please leave here quickly, leave forever, never come to me again, and don't wait for me again. When I get to the Holy Land and spit in front of the Holy Land, I will die and we will be husband and wife again in the next life. As for the benefactor who saved your life, the two of us will repay him in the next life. St. Charles looked at the female nurse with more and more greed in his eyes. If it weren't for the internal rigid rules of the Tianlong people, he really wanted to execute her on the street right now, and shouted angrily. Why are you still standing there? Take her away, what a bunch of trash. The three heavily armored knights behind him agreed in unison and quickly stepped forward to catch the female nurse who had given up resistance and accepted the reality. Cheng Cheng was in the far corner, his eyes were cold and golden, the Zhenhai sword was trembling in his hand. In the end, he just moved his lips slightly and suppressed the idea of killing this Tianlong man now. Just wait, your time to breathe freely is running out. However, at this moment, the golden cloud that had rescued the man just now flew past at an extremely fast speed, like a golden lightning. Somersault Cloud quickly picked up the female nurse and the doctor, lifted the three of them and the wounded on the stretcher, and flew directly to the distant hospital. The speed was so fast that none of the three heavily armored knights could react. One of the knights lost his footing and fell to the ground, along with the other two knights. Advertisement St. Charlos, a dragon who was as fat as a pig, was shaking with anger. He raised his pistol and pointed it at the three knights and pulled the trigger. However, the gun did not fire. Only then did he remember that there was no bullet in the gun. He immediately slammed the pistol at the three knights, walked over and kicked one of the knights on the head hard, and cursed angrily. Trash, what a waste. Kill them all when you get home. The three heavily armored knights were all lying on the ground, letting the Tianlong people vent their anger, not daring to make the slightest resistance. After being tired from kicking, Holy Rosewater angrily rebuked. Search all the nearby hospitals for me and dig 3 feet deep to find that female nurse. I don't believe where she can escape. I want to see the female nurse before the sun rises tomorrow morning. The butler in black immediately said seriously, yes. Cheng Cheng, who was leaning against the wall, sneered and said to himself, don't worry, you won't even see the moon tonight. Then Cheng Cheng glanced away and saw Zoro strutting over from the street. Come on, judging from Uncle Suo's expression, he must be lost again. He quickly greeted Zoro softly and pulled Zoro into the corner of the street. Zoro thought at first that someone was going to attack him, and he immediately grabbed the 2 knives at his waist. But when he saw that the opponent was Cheng Cheng, he was instantly overjoyed. Master Cheng Cheng, why are you here? Cheng Cheng didn't care about Zoro's name and said with a smile. I still want to ask you, are you lost? Zoro chuckled and said proudly, no way, I'm just strolling around. Every tree here has a number. As long as you remember the number, you won't get lost. Cheng Cheng was surprised and said, I didn't expect that you, a road idiot, actually know how to mark the road signs. I haven't seen you for half a year, and you have made a lot of progress. That's not true. People always have to make a little progress every day. Zoro said as he looked at Cheng Cheng, feeling shocked. Advertisement the last time he saw Cheng Cheng, he only felt that Cheng Cheng was very powerful and exuded a strong sword spirit. Today's Cheng Cheng has become restrained with his sword, as unfathomable as the sea. The more this happens, the more excited Zoro becomes. He has not been idle in the past 6 months, and his strength has long been different. But the more powerful he became, the more he could feel Cheng Cheng's terrifying strength. But Cheng Cheng stood calmly in front of him, feeling like a small boat on the sea, about to be hit by the surging waves at any time. Devour. Looking at Zoro, who was eager to try, Cheng Cheng smiled and said, it's not time for the two of us to fight. There may be a big battle today. You'd better conserve your energy. Only then did Zoro put aside his thoughts of taking action. The two of them continued to chat for a few more words. After the Tianlong man walked away, Cheng Cheng rode Zoro on the bubble car, letting him ride in the back seat, and left here. After the Tianlong people rode the middle-aged slave and slowly left again, the street returned to its original bustle, and those who were kneeling on both sides of the road, whether they were pirates, businessmen, or ordinary people, dared to stand up. Pirates who were a little braver dared to secretly glance at the celestial dragons. As for those ordinary people, they have never seen the appearance of the celestial dragons they kneel before. Every time they see others kneeling, they kneel down faster as a conditioned reflex. As long as you kneel down, the world will be peaceful and everything will be worry-free. Cheng Cheng and Zoro rode around the edge of the island as much as possible. Cheng Cheng also lost the leisure and elegance of admiring the scenery on the road. The bubble motorcycle turned on the fastest speed, riding fast and lightning, shooting stars catching up with the moon. I didn't know how many resin bubbles I burst along the way, and it didn't take long before I arrived in front of the population auction house on island number 1. Cheng Cheng and Zoro got out of the car and were not in a hurry to get in. Zoro asked in confusion, Master Cheng Cheng, are we really here for anything? This place will soon become a flashpoint for the war. Cheng Cheng said casually, then took out the phone he carried with him and dialed the number skillfully. The phone opposite quickly connected, as if he had been waiting for the call. Lao Luo, leave a few people to guard the ship, and the rest will come to the number 1 population auction house. Trafalgaro on the other side of the phone smiled coldly and replied simply and clearly, "Roger that." Chapter 166 Auction House. After receiving a call from Cheng Cheng, the Black Justice team members who were lurking on the island dispersed and all started to take action, heading towards island number 1. The seemingly peaceful island suddenly had an undercurrent. Cheng Cheng looked at Zoro and smiled. "Let's go, it's time for us to go in. A good show is about to be staged." Zoro nodded and followed Cheng Cheng silently. At the entrance of the auction house, Sanji, Shaohachi, Nami and others were arguing loudly with the auction house staff in front. Full of anger, Sanji reprimanded, "Kemi is our partner, there is no reason to be trafficked by you, let us in quickly." The auction house staff was dressed like a clown, wearing sunglasses, stroking the black top hat on his head, and said calmly, "I don't care so much, but if you force your way in and hinder the business, I can only take legal measures. By the way, I kindly remind you that the Marine headquarters is not far away." Nami and Chopper were filled with anger. It would be really troublesome if they provoked people from Marine headquarters. Angry, Sanji grabbed the staff by the collar and said angrily, "This is bullshit that is hindering business. This is a human auction house. How can there be a business like yours in the world? Does Marine not care about you?" The staff had seen many people like this looking for trouble and did not resist. They mocked without fear. "You usually lawless pirates, when did you have sympathy?" Nami scolded. "Human trafficking is banned in the world. Tell me, how much did you pay Marine to buy the relationship?" The staff member sneered. "Although what you said is very straightforward, little girl, you are indeed right. Even when Marine people talk to us in person, they deliberately avoid the word human trafficking. It is as if this business does not exist. As for how much money is given, you can use your poor imagination." Sanji sarcastically said, "Sure enough, they are all the same." Frankie, who was standing at the end, was instantly furious. He raised his arm and was about to shoot at the auction house. His wrist flashed with light and shouted, "Let me blow up this auction house and see how he continues this dirty business." Lao Sha and Trafalgaro, both dressed in yellow robes, walked in at the same time. After they came in, Lao Sha sat in the back row, but Trafalgaro, the captain of the 3rd Division, walked slowly to the front. The platoon found a place to sit down. Advertisement Zalba immediately stood up and blocked Frankie's arm with his body, begging, "It can't be like this. Kemi already belongs to this auction house, and at the same time, he may also wear that explosive collar and act randomly. It will kill Kemi." Although Frankie has not met Cheng Cheng, he often heard Nami and Luffy mention it. After learning that Cheng Cheng was the captain of the Black Justice Pirates some time ago, he became even more admired. He has always wanted to meet him. Luffy is a powerful big brother. Cheng Cheng, who was just at the door of the auction house, heard their conversation clearly and basically understood the ins and outs of the matter. He knew that there was no need to get entangled with these little people. Nami hurriedly turned her head and looked behind her. When she saw Cheng Cheng, her anger suddenly disappeared and she said happily, "Brother Cheng Cheng, I didn't expect it to be you. Why are you here too?" This time, the staff did not stop Nami and the others. He also knew very well that no one dared to cause trouble in this auction house. She is skilled in all kinds of housework, and she is also a grandmaster of chess and go. She will satisfy no matter what your excessive demands are. It is undoubtedly the best choice for you to buy her home and use it to pass the boring time. After Zalba saw Cheng Cheng, he was filled with fear. He knew that this man was too powerful, and he was so submissive that he didn't know what to say. "Isn't it shameless for you, the Black Justice Pirates and the Straw Hats, to do this? How can you be considered a big pirate if you bully a small number of people if you have more people?" The next moment, the door of the auction house was slowly pushed open. At this moment, the middle-aged host wearing star glasses on the auction stage continued to speak and said passionately. Cheng Cheng smiled and patted Zalba's shoulder, "Please treat me to takoyaki when you have time. I've heard about it a long time ago. The takoyaki you make is excellent." As for the rumors in newspapers that the Straw Hats were too weak, Kid scoffed. "Only a fool would really believe it. After seeing him today, I was really impressed. His face is as handsome as Nami and the others described him." Cheng Cheng's eyes narrowed and he saw the hedgehog-headed Captain Kid first. At this moment, the two of them looked at each other in the air. Cheng Cheng smiled and greeted Nami and the others. "Hey, Nami, Sanji, Chopper, don't freeze at the door. We have to go in early to buy things, otherwise others may buy them if we are late." Nami hurriedly said to Cheng Cheng, "Brother Cheng Cheng, Kemi was kidnapped by human traffickers. She is a friend we met on the road. If we don't save her, she will be auctioned off." Cheng Cheng patted Nami on the shoulder and said softly, "Don't worry, since this is an auction house, let's just buy Kemi back according to the rules here. Advertisement: the last time I participated in the Supernova Alliance, I didn't see this kid. Isn't this the Straw Hats? I know the others, but who is this white-haired boy? His strength is so terrifying that I feel fear in my heart just by looking at him." After pushing the gate of opening, Cheng Cheng and the others sat down casually in the back row. Just when Kid wanted to get up and leave, Kira on the side gently shook her head at him. After Cheng Cheng's reminder, Nami realized that yes, she still had 200 million belly. Since she couldn't take action, she should just follow the rules here and buy Kemi directly. Captain Kid quickly looked away with horror in his heart. Kid suddenly realized that there were celestial dragons here, and it would be the safest to stay here at this moment. Sanji praised. "It's true, Zalba's sauce is cooked just right. The auction house is very large, a stepped structure with high levels on all sides and low levels in the middle. At this moment, it is almost full of nobles in gorgeous clothes and ferocious-looking pirates. Kid, who was belatedly aware of it, had already realized that the Straw Hat Pirates were definitely related to Black Justice. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for the Straw Hat Pirates to be fine during the war, and everyone else would have died, hurt. Nami didn't take Cheng Cheng's words seriously. She had 200 million belly, which was already a lot of wealth. Not to mention that at this moment, there are 2 Tianlong people present inside, who is not afraid of death and dares to cause trouble at this time. For some reason, Kid always felt like he was sitting on pins and needles after looking at the white-haired boy. Sanji and Chopper also greeted Cheng Cheng happily. Kid narrowed his eyes. What are you doing? Are you trying to surround me? Next is product number 14, which is a human maid. Brother, I am not short of money now. Chapter 167 Organize the family. The maid dressed as a young woman walked out slowly and charmingly, looking at the people in the audience with frightened eyes and clasping their fingers together. The noblemen in the audience were obviously looking at her with great interest. Their eyes were not looking at the same kind of people, but as if they were looking at a piece of merchandise, showing interest. At the same time, they were all planning in their hearts the highest price they would accept for this maid. Obviously, this plump young maid still has a lot of attraction for them. The host, who has been in the auction house for many years, has long been proficient in figuring out the thoughts of everyone in the audience. After noticing that the heat of the scene was about the same, he shouted in a sharp voice. The starting price for a human maid is 600,000 belly. The auction house was silent for a while at first, and no one said anything. Obviously, the price was a bit beyond their psychological expectations. If they bought it outside, the price could almost buy 2 human women of similar quality. It was quiet for a short while, then a man in a suit asked the price obscenely, 700,000 baileys. Someone else in the corner shouted, 900,000 belly, I want it. After hesitating for a while, the host with star glasses knocked the hammer in his hand hard, and the sound was clear and crisp. Immediately there was a young nobleman in the audience who couldn't hold back his anger. He gritted his teeth and said loudly, 1.5 million belly, no one can rob it from me. There was a slight curve in the corner of the host's mouth. He was really taken advantage of. Who would rob you for a mere human woman? This time he made a lot of money. As for the people who made bids the first 2 times, they were all entrusted by the auction house. The others looked at the young noble with amusement in their eyes, not wanting to tell the truth. The host knew that the price was already extreme, and it was impossible for a bigger fool to pay a higher price. However, due to the rules of the auction house and a little bit of luck, he still pretended to wait for a while. Boom. Boom. After the hammer fell twice, the host knocked the 3rd time without hesitation. After 3 hammer shots, the product belonged to the seller. The young nobleman twisted his body in the chair and looked at the goods that were about to belong to him wantonly. I'll pay 3 million belly. Cheng Cheng, who was sitting in the back row, broke the silence of the auction house with his plain voice, and also made the wooden hammer in the host's hand float in the air. Advertisement. The host was immediately overjoyed and said excitedly, 3 million once, 3 million twice, 3 million 3 times. As if afraid that the bidder would regret it, the host struck the hammer 3 times in succession with very quick intervals. Make a deal. The host said excitedly, then this young maid now belongs to that gentleman. The young noble leaned back on his chair in despair and became listless. 1.5 million belly was already the limit for him. If he exceeded this number, he would definitely be punished when he returned home. Cheng Cheng smiled and nodded gently. Nami and Cheng Cheng were next to each other. She whispered, I can understand your mood. Don't worry. If you don't have enough money, I have 200 million belly here. I'll give it to you first. The remaining money should be enough. Save Kemi. It seems that Nami has misunderstood me. Cheng Cheng smiled bitterly and explained, I'm not short of money, don't worry. Nami obviously didn't understand the importance of the words, not short of money. She just thought that her brother Cheng Cheng had taken so much care of her before and that he was Luffy's brother. Due to the reason, he had to rush to pay the money soon. Okay. Next as the auction continues. After the young maid was led down, a tall purple-haired female dancer was led up. She walked barefoot on the stage with heavy steps. The heavy iron chain around her neck jingled with every step she took. After this woman with a perfect figure came on stage, she didn't need any introduction from the host at all. The scene was filled with cheers, even more enthusiastic than the previous maid. The host just made a brief introduction and said the starting price at 800,000 belly in a sharp voice. This time, everyone in the audience obviously did not hesitate. This female dancer was too attractive to them, and they all started bidding. 1 million baileys, 2 million baileys, 3.5 million belly. Everyone shouted louder and louder, far exceeding the price of the previous maid. When it soared to 4 million baileys, the host was already overjoyed. Cheng Cheng didn't bother to waste any more time and played a bidding game with them. He directly said loudly, 10 million baileys. The whole place was in an uproar. Everyone looked at Cheng Cheng like a fool. Where did he get taken advantage of? Advertisement. It's enough to buy a maid for 3 million. It can be said to be a special hobby of young people. Can you still understand what it means to buy a female dancer for 10 million? Although this purple-haired female dancer has a rare golden proportion figure and is big where she should be, 10 million belly is definitely not worth it. It's crazy. The host's heart surged, knowing that today might be his good luck. Coupled with the mermaid in the finale, today's performance might break through the peak auction record in 10 years. Bang bang bang. After hitting the hammer 3 times in a row, the female dancer was successfully bought by Cheng Cheng. Nami can only pray secretly now. If Cheng Cheng doesn't buy anything else, the remaining less than 200 million belly should be enough. The next person who was led to the stage was a middle-aged pirate captain, who also wore a thick iron chain around his neck. His forehead was covered with cold sweat, and he looked at everyone tremblingly, his face purple as if he was making a difficult decision. After a few breaths, blood flowed from the corner of the middle-aged marine captain's mouth first, and then he collapsed to the ground. Before the host could quote his price, he was already dead on the auction stage. The noble women in the entire venue screamed in panic. They had never seen such a bloody scene before. The host on the stage cursed and immediately lowered the curtain and asked other staff to carry the body away. Cheng Cheng looked calm and sighed. You can be considered a man, but he still dares to bite his tongue and commit suicide. Hachi, Sanji, and Nami all looked gloomy and were silent. At this time, the door of the auction house was loudly pushed open again, and St. Charos, the celestial dragon, walked in riding a slave. The noisy hall immediately fell silent, and the nobles looked at the celestial dragon St. Charos in fear. Compared with the Tianlong people, their little family background is really nothing. The staff member immediately knelt down in front of St. Charles, bowed his head and said respectfully, "Welcome." St. Charles didn't look at him at all. He kicked the slave on the head and cursed angrily. "It's all your fault for being so slow. You almost made me late. Sell this waste too. He is no longer useful." The housekeeper nodded immediately and gave instructions to the staff. Only then did St. Charles walk to his sister and father and sit down. Cheng Cheng raised the corners of his mouth, his eyes were cold, and murmured, very good, it would be best if the whole family died neatly." Chapter 168. What is a rich person? After dealing with the pirate captain who bit his tongue and committed suicide on the stage, the host immediately adjusted himself and looked at the audience with a smile on his face. Especially after noticing that another Tianlong person had arrived, he worked even harder and said loudly and passionately. Okay, just now pirate number 16 Lajuba fainted due to excessive stress and a nosebleed. I will introduce it to you another day. Ladies and gentlemen who are interested, you can pay attention to our latest information in time. The nobles in the audience immediately breathed a sigh of relief and resumed their smiles. It would be terrible if it was really a dead person or something. The host continued enthusiastically. But what I am going to introduce to you next is definitely a super popular product that will make you forget your worries just now. Along with the exciting music, 4 staff members wearing clown costumes immediately launched a huge circular fish tank from behind the scenes. The fish tank was wrapped in white cloth, so it was not clear what was inside the fish tank. The curiosity of the nobles was suddenly aroused, and they laughed and discussed what this thing was. The host smiled mysteriously. Next, let us first see the graceful and moving figure of this product. In an instant, all other lights in the venue were turned off, and only an extremely bright light was turned on behind the fish tank. Under the cover of the white cloth, a silhouette of a mermaid's body appeared in the fish tank. The mermaid's hands were attached to the wall of the fish tank, as if she was struggling. Although I didn't see the appearance of this mermaid, just this touching silhouette made everyone in the venue excited. Could it be that she is really a mermaid? I didn't expect to have such good luck today. I've always wanted to see a mermaid. Some nobles even glanced in Cheng Cheng's direction, sneering in their hearts. This young man must regret it to death now, right? Compared with the mermaid, the product you bought is really rubbish. Cheng Cheng remained expressionless, just placing the Zhenhai sword flat on his knees and gently rubbing the tip of his index finger on the sword. Behind him, Zalba and Starfish Papagu looked angry, gritted their teeth, and wanted to eat the host. When the host saw that the atmosphere at the venue had been enhanced, he stopped showing off with great enthusiasm and spoke in a sharp and harsh voice. Advertisement, no more nonsense. Now please enjoy it carefully and let us reveal the final answer together. After finishing speaking, the host, whose legs were shaking with excitement, suddenly pulled off the white cloth covering the fish tank. In the fish tank, Kemi had a heavy iron chain around her neck and was firmly tied inside. She put her hands against the fish tank and her eyes were full of fear. After finally seeing the mermaid's face clearly, the entire auction house burst into cheers. Without any marketing introduction from the host, the atmosphere reached the climax of today's auction. Even the host, who was used to seeing big storms on stage, had trembling legs and cold sweat on his forehead. The entire auction house was silent. This explosive number directly silenced everyone. That's great. It's really a mermaid. That's great. Zalba, Papagu and Sanji suddenly changed their expressions and looked at the Tianlong people angrily. The heavenly dragon St. Charles Saint, who was in the front row, had his thick lips trembling, leaned forward and widened his eyes, hesitating and said excitedly. Even St. Charles' father, St. Rosewater, and his sister, St. Charulia, looked shocked and looked at Cheng Cheng. They had never encountered such a situation before. Cheng Cheng stood up with a smile and walked towards the stage. Ignoring everyone's gaze, he said solemnly, "It's over now." In most cases in the past, as long as they, the Tianlong people, opened their mouths to bid, no matter how high or low the bid was, naturally there would be no unscrupulous people to compete with them, not to mention that the price offered by St. Charles today was already very high. The other nobles in the venue gave up immediately after hearing this huge number, full of frustration. 500 million, no, this number is too big. How dare the host continue to show off after hearing that the offer was 500 million belly? The hammer fell down immediately. He did not believe that anyone had the strength and courage to dare to compete with the Tianlong people. But just when he pointed at the microphone and wanted to tell his psychological price, under the eager eyes of everyone, the host paused at the right time, hoping to elevate the atmosphere again. This white-haired boy is in trouble. I'll give you 1 billion. Advertisement. Cheng Cheng stood up again. He picked up the calling sign that Nami had dropped on the ground, and gently patted Nami on the shoulder. His voice was calm, but it was clearly heard by the entire silent auction house. Brother Cheng Cheng, do you have that much money? If not, wait until we rescue Kemi and then run away. I will ask Zeus to release thunder and lightning to kill these shameless guys. His biggest dream since childhood was to raise a mermaid. Unfortunately, mermaids have always lived in the deep sea. It is really difficult to catch a mermaid here. The entire venue was silent, and even St. Charlos, the heavenly dragon, did not continue to bid. At this moment, all he could think about was how to torture this hateful white-haired boy in the future. What a young mermaid, so beautiful. When I saw Zalba and the others, I laughed happily, thinking that Nami and the others would definitely save me. Nami also raised the auction number plate in his hand and said with great confidence, "Don't worry, we will get Kemi back soon. We have 200 million Baileys." The fishman Xiaohachi and the starfish Papago, and Kemi waved her hands not to worry. The celestial dragon St. Charlos suddenly stood up and shouted loudly, 500 million, I will pay 500 million belly. Frankie, Sanji, and Zalba all looked at Cheng Cheng in surprise. Nami leaned close to Cheng Cheng's ear and asked softly. The celestial dragon St. Charlos was furious and looked around, trying to find out who was so bold. It's amazing. It's a treasure. This is definitely a treasure. No one can steal it from me. Nami's body shook, her pupils suddenly dilated, and she felt a sense of powerlessness. The number plate in her hand fell to the ground with a crisp sound, and she said angrily. St. Charles said calmly. I want to let the piranha chase her. It will be interesting. I have long heard that mermaids are the fastest swimmers in the world. I want to see if it is true. The host said excitedly. A mermaid has only been auctioned once in so many years. I think everyone must be very interested. So, how much should you start bidding? The host sneered in his heart, and at the same time he was surprised by the rich family background of this white-haired young man. Instantly, the entire auction house was in an uproar. How could this happen? My 200 million is not enough. The father beside St. Charles said with some complaint. You are spending money indiscriminately again. Don't you still have piranhas in the tank at home? Kemi, who was panicking and frightened in the fish tank, kept looking for Zalba and Nami. Chapter 169 Wrath Hammer Tianlong. The host looked excited. 1 billion, this is definitely the pinnacle of his auction career. No matter how miserable this white-haired boy ends up, he can make a lot of money just from the commission of 1 billion. He didn't have any hesitation, and instead of shouting the price 3 times, he directly raised the wooden hammer in his hand above his head, dropped it heavily, and shouted, Deal. The wooden hammer suddenly made a roaring sound, which echoed throughout the hall. However, at the same time as the wooden hammer sounded, a bigger explosion sounded. An airship carried Luffy and crashed into the auction house. The door of the auction house was smashed into pieces, and then it rushed into the auction house without losing speed. Cheng Cheng happened to be walking towards the auction table in the aisle at this time. He wanted to chop the airship that was about to hit him into pieces with a sword. However, after discovering that Luffy was also on it, he forcefully took back the airship that was ready to go. The blue sword light was hit hard by the airship onto the auction platform. The silent auction house was hit by Luffy, and smoke and dust suddenly filled the air. It began to become a mess, and the whole place was in chaos. After Cheng Cheng landed smoothly, he shook his head with a smile and looked helplessly at his brother Luffy. What can he do? Can I still kill him with Genhai sword? After Luffy landed, all he could think about was saving Kemi, and he didn't even think about who he bumped into. Then after seeing Kemi in the fish tank, he was so angry that he locked his friend in the fish tank. Regardless, he strode forward, clashed his fists, and yelled, Kemi, just wait, I'll come to save you right away. Kemi in the fish tank was also full of joy after seeing Luffy, and shouted excitedly at Luffy, but after seeing that the Dragon Man was still there that day, Kemi quickly waved his hands violently, trying to stop Luffy from moving forward. But no matter how loudly Kemi speaks in the fish tank, people outside cannot hear her. When Luffy was about to rush to the stage, he was suddenly stopped by Xiao Ba. Luffy, don't be impulsive. Kemi has been bought by brother Cheng Cheng. As long as we pay the money later, we can buy Kemi. Get out. Luffy dragged Hachi forward desperately and continued walking, saying angrily, I don't want my partner to be sold as a commodity. She is not a commodity. Xiaohachi used both arms to hold Luffy tighter, his voice full of prayer. The collar around Kemi's neck will explode. If you force yourself up, she will be killed. Cheng Cheng was about to speak to stop Luffy when the familiar cold voice of the system sounded in his mind. Congratulations to the uncle for completing the Sabo de Archipelago sign-in task. Close black lens bracket. Advertisement. Reward. Time gem fragments. Close black lens bracket. Then, an emerald with a smooth and round surface suddenly appeared on Cheng Cheng's chest, shining with a vibrant green light. Every time he breathed in and out, it was as if the emerald itself was alive. It's just that the originally oval-shaped gem seemed to have been neatly cut in half from the middle by some unknown force, causing the time gem to be in pieces. When the green fluorescent time gem fragments slowly fell into the space ring, they did not fall to the ground like other gold coins and gems, but hovered in the air 100 meters above the ground. Luffy twisted his neck and stretched out his hand to lower his straw hat a little. He didn't answer St. Charles's words, but just walked forward silently, with a real murderous intention that was almost spreading out. Father, look, I personally hunted a fishman. Isn't that awesome? Yeah. Nami and Sanji both had gloomy faces, suppressing their anger tightly, and even Zeus turned into a black cloud with flashes of lightning. Captain Luo of the 3rd Division in the front row narrowed his eyes and was filled with admiration. He is indeed the younger brother of the head of the Cheng Cheng family. Luffy was belatedly reacting at this moment. His body suddenly tensed up, and his eyes were full of anger as he looked at the celestial dragon St. Charlos who fired, exuding endless killing intent. Kid looked at Straw Hat Luffy in disbelief. For this Straw Hat Luffy who had been his leader for 2 days, he always felt that Luffy was weak, but he couldn't believe that he really dared to fight against him. The celestial dragons took action. St. Charles's entire cheek was sunken, his skull was shattered, and his body flew backwards like a ball. He didn't know whether he was alive or dead. Luffy's body was as electric as lightning, and he swung out a punch without hesitation, hitting the face of St. Charlos, the celestial dragon. But it's a pity that only half of the time stones don't know if they still have that kind of top-notch mysterious energy. Cheng Cheng looked calm on the surface, but there was already a turmoil in his heart. He immediately held the fragment of the time gem in his hand as quickly as possible and put it into the space ring. However, Cheng Cheng's attention was still on the sidelines, and he did not notice the subtle changes in the space ring. During this delay, the auction hall once again boiled with excitement, and countless people screamed in surprise. Luffy suddenly took a step forward and looked fiercely at the celestial dragon who was just 5 meters away. Charles Saint suddenly took a step back unconsciously. He had never seen such a murderous person before. He has long been unable to stand these beastly dragons. He will just provoke General Marine and kill a general himself. If Marine really uses all his strength to attack Cayenne later, it will be nothing more than destroying the fantasy beast in advance. Just a spiritual tree. It turned out that Hachi subconsciously stretched out his other 4 arms because he used too much force to stop Luffy, and was discovered by other nobles present. Advertisement boom. Now Black Justice has nearly 40 members of the Phantom Beast species, which is enough. St. Charles was furious and reprimanded sternly. Untouchable. What kind of look do you have? Do you want to die? St. Charlos, the heavenly dragon, was dancing and jumping on the spot, as happy as a child who had done something great. He proudly asked his father for credit and said, "Why did the fishman appear here? Someone come and kill him quickly." A harsh gunshot sounded. Kemi in the fish tank beat the fish tank as hard as he could, opening his mouth wide and roaring, but the outside world still couldn't hear his voice. Luffy broke away from Hachi with an expressionless expression, his murderous intention even stronger. Could this be the Infinity Stone of the Marvel Universe? Cheng Cheng looked calm. He would not stop Luffy, who was already so angry that he was shaking all over. So what if he killed 3 celestial dragons? If it is really the time stone, wouldn't it be possible to travel through time at will? Zoro and Nami both stood up silently, with serious expressions. No one tried to stop Luffy. Their belief was simple. What Luffy did was what they had to do. Blood flowed from the corner of Zaoba's mouth, and he begged. "You promise me, no matter what happens, you will not take action against the Tianlong people." "It's a fishman, what a disgusting fishman." One step forward and the ground shattered. Suddenly, Luffy felt his feet being grabbed. Zaoba's chest was hit by a bullet, a cloud of blood mist exploded, and he fell weakly to the ground. Everyone in the entire auction house felt this extremely strong murderous intention. A poplar sapling that had withered in this desert space, its branches and leaves moved quietly, as if blown by the breeze. Chapter 170 Flowing Sakura. The whole place was silent, and everyone looked at Straw Hat Luffy in shock. Lying on the ground, Hachi looked at Luffy with a worried look on his face. He didn't expect that Luffy actually hit the celestial dragon, and said hurriedly, "Luffy, go quickly, you guys go quickly." Kemi in the fish tank was full of fear, covering her mouth and speechless. Luffy stroked his straw hat with one hand, looked at Nami and the others and apologized with a smile. "I'm sorry, everyone, first lured the Marine General and the battleship over." Zoro drew his sword out of its sheath and said coldly, "Don't talk nonsense, even if you don't take action, I will chop him to death." Nami hurriedly ran to Zaoba to check his injuries, handed him a fairy bean, and ordered, "Stop talking, take this medicine first." Xiaoba, who was covered in blood, said in a low voice, apologetically, "I'm sorry, it's all my fault, I caused you trouble." Nami smiled slightly, "I can't help it, who made him Luffy?" Chopper, who had transformed into an ordinary person, said seriously, "The key to Kemi's collar should be somewhere in the background. We have to find the key first. If there is no key, Kemi will definitely be killed even if he escapes now." Frankie and Chopper both knew the seriousness of the matter and rushed directly to the backstage of the auction house without saying a word. Shilulia Palace looked at Brother Wong, who didn't know whether he was alive or dead, with anger, and scolded. "Even my father has never beaten him. Who are you, a bunch of untouchables?" As the father of Charles Saint, Roswad Saint, he stood up suddenly, without any nonsense, took out his pistol and shot Luffy without hesitation. Flames spurted out from the muzzle, bang bang bang. At this moment, the wealthy nobles in the auction house panicked and ran away, exclaiming, "The Tianlong people are angry, run away." A series of 3 bullets were fired rapidly towards Luffy in the shape of a zigzag. Saint Roswald gritted his teeth and looked at the Straw Hat Boy. He must die now. Luffy looked even more indifferent, looking at Saint Rosewater calmly. At the same time, Cheng Cheng also moved. His figure was like lightning, much faster than a bullet. Advertisement. A sword light flashed in the air, and the 3 whizzing bullets were all chopped away by the sword, and a series of sparks exploded in the air. Only then did Luffy notice Cheng Cheng's presence. Looking at Cheng Cheng's back, he grinned and said, "Brother Cheng Cheng, you are here too. I'm so sorry. I beat up the celestial dragon." Cheng Cheng turned his head and glanced at Luffy, saying disdainfully, Look at your potential, keep an eye on it, this is what you should do when you see a celestial dragon in the future. Then Cheng Cheng took a step forward, and his figure disappeared on the spot, like a hurricane passing between St. Rosewater and Shillelagh Palace. Cheng Cheng, who appeared on the stage again, smiled slightly, sheathed his sword skillfully, put the Zhenhai sword on his back, and said softly, F***Kade, I finally feel good. Shillelagh Palace just felt a strong wind blowing by, not knowing what happened, and subconsciously wanted to curse a few words. However, as soon as she opened her mouth, her entire head slid down from her neck, and a pillar of blood erupted from her neck. St. Rosewater was terrified and wanted to look for the white-haired boy who had just disappeared in front of him, but just as he turned his whole head rolled to the ground like the Shillelagh Palace, and he died without closing his eyes. At this moment, the people in the venue truly realized the seriousness of the matter, and they all screamed, rolled and crawled out of the auction house that was destined to become a hell. The celestial dragons have been killed. The celestial dragons have been killed. Some aristocratic young people who have been pampered since childhood and have never smelled the smell of blood have their legs weak and their bodies are shaking uncontrollably. Their minds are very clear and they want to get here immediately, but their legs are weak and they are not obeying their orders. Kid stood there with a gloomy look, looking at the white-haired boy with a sword in his complicated eyes, muttering to himself. They are all a bunch of lunatics. Luffy was stunned for a moment, then burst out laughing, his hearty laughter echoing throughout the auction house. At this moment, the alarm sounded. Countless heavily armored knights holding spears rushed in from all the gates of the auction house. Like an endless tide, they were filled with murderous intent and surrounded Cheng Cheng and all of them. Zoro, who had already held the sword with both hands, had cold eyes. The swords of third-generation Kitetsu and Chu Shui spun at the same time, and a faint stream of water surged around him. Taking one step forward, his figure was like the wind, and he slammed into the heavily armored knight rushing towards him from the door. Breath of water double-blade current waterspout. Advertisement a tornado mixed with water burst out in an instant, and all 10 heavily armored knights were swept up dozens of meters high by the strong wind. Regardless, Nami asked Zeus to release thunder and lightning. For a moment, the entire auction house was filled with lightning and thunder. The knights wearing heavy armor trembled and fell to the ground in large pieces. The entire auction house suddenly fell into a melee. Cheng Cheng, standing at the auction site, now had time to steady the bomb shackles around Kemi's neck. Once the shackles are opened violently, the internal bomb will be directly triggered, killing the person unless a key is used to open it. Therefore, after this kind of shackles was first invented, it was welcomed by nobles all over the world. It not only allows slaves to have freedom of movement, but also firmly controls their lives. It is undoubtedly the best choice for them. Cheng Cheng's fingertips lightly touched the fish tank. With a slight movement, the thickened glass fish tank, which could not be penetrated by bullets, instantly turned into powder. The water that was no longer bound in the fish tank poured out in an instant, soaking the entire auction table. Kemi, who was able to make a voice again, looked at Sabo with a little worry, but at the same time said gratefully to Cheng Cheng. Thank you for saving me, run away, you killed the Tianlong people, General Marine will be here soon. Cheng Cheng said softly. It's okay, I'll help you untie this annoying thing first. Are you ready, Kemi? Papagu, the starfish beside Zauba, said quickly, brother, don't, this collar will explode if there is no key to open it. Brook immediately added. Yes, we have all seen this collar explode with our own eyes, and it will kill Kemi. Usopp also echoed. Brother Cheng Cheng, although we all know that you are very powerful, but now Frankie has gone to find the key, and maybe he will find it soon. Let's wait for him. You must be careful, do not impulse. Starfish Papago shook the silent Luffy vigorously and prayed, stop him quickly, Kemi will die. The longer it takes, the more danger Luffy and the others will be. Kemi knew this very well, and immediately nodded and said resolutely, come on, do it quickly. Cheng Cheng stretched out his index finger and placed it 1 centimeter away from the shackles, praising, little girl, you are very brave. You are qualified to be Luffy's partner. Then Cheng Cheng said silently in his mind, Lu Ying. Chapter 171 The three generals are dispatched. Cheng Cheng took a deep breath, his pale golden eyes suddenly opened, and his aura reached its peak in an instant. On his fingertips, an invisible force of armed domination was suddenly released, shooting out of his fingertips and directly penetrating into the inside of the shackles, and the bomb inside was instantly destroyed. Nami and the others looked at Kemi worriedly. The bomb at his neck was so powerful that once it exploded, it could easily kill someone. However, they believed that Cheng Cheng would never act recklessly. At this point, he is always much more reliable than Luffy. However, at this time, the alarm countdown in the shackles suddenly triggered, and all of their hearts suddenly rose to their throats. Drop. 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 The siren rang like a death knell. The sound was not loud, but it was unusually sharp and harsh. Starfish Papago grabbed Luffy's ankle, burst into tears, and cried, Kemi, no. Even Nami secretly clenched her fists and held her breath. The sirens were getting louder and louder, everyone was even more worried and nervous. Kemi had a warm smile on her face. She was able to meet so many friends before she died. She also went to Soap Bubble Park to ride the Ferris wheel, fulfilling her childhood dream. She has no regrets in her life. Goodbye, everyone, nice to meet you. Click, there was a crisp sound, and the bomb shackles around Kemi's neck split into two and fell off. The imagined explosion did not occur. Nami, Zauba, and Papagu all looked at Kemi with great excitement. They all swarmed up, surrounded Kemi, and cheered. Zoro had a solemn look on his face. He had just focused all his energy on observing how Cheng Cheng took action, but he still didn't understand it at all and had no idea what was going on. Advertisement Luffy suddenly had stars in his eyes, looked at Cheng Cheng with admiration, and asked the doubts in his heart without any scruples. Wow, that's amazing. What happened just now? How did you do it? Please tell me. At this time, the wall on the stage was slowly torn apart, and an old man with white robe and white hair walked out from the gap, stepping on flip-flops and walked out casually. The white-haired old man still exuded a strong smell of alcohol, and it looked like he had just drank a lot. Rayleigh strolled out holding an empty silver portable wine flask in her right hand. She shook it slightly, as if she wanted to shake out some more wine out of thin air. When it still didn't work, she just threw it on the ground and looked at Cheng Cheng. A young man with the same hair color admired. There are not many young people who can perform Liu Ying at such a young age. He is worthy of having the same hair color as me. Others were confused after hearing Liu Ying, having never heard of what this thing was. Luffy asked loudly. Grandpa with white hair, what is a flowing cherry blossom? After Rayleigh saw the straw hat on Luffy's head, he let out a light sigh and sighed. Your hat is not bad. As for what a flowing cherry blossom is, young man, you need to figure it out yourself. Then Rayleigh saw Sabo, whose face was covered with blood, and said in surprise, Sabo, I didn't expect you to be here too. I haven't eaten your octopus balls for a long time. I miss you very much. After Xiao Hachi ate the fairy beans, although he looked covered in blood, his physical injuries had already recovered and he was not serious. He patted his chest and promised. When we go back, we will take care of enough. Let's hold an octopus dumpling party. Cheng Cheng looked at Rayleigh with a smile and asked, Grandpa Rayleigh, how about we make a deal? Rayleigh raised an eyebrow and replied with interest, Oh, tell me? At the same time, at Marine Headquarters, Marinefondo. In the conference room on the top floor, Warring States, who had always had a mild temper, suddenly smashed a glass to pieces, covered his forehead with a headache and said angrily. That kid again, he keeps causing me trouble, but this time it's better, he actually killed 3 celestial dragons, Garp. No one can save them this time. Marine hero Garp crossed his legs, wrinkled his nose and said disdainfully, It's none of my business. You. Garp's rogue character immediately made Fleet Admiral Warring States even more angry, and he cursed. No one in your clan can do anything easy. Advertisement Garp continued to turn his nostrils upward and look up at the ceiling. The chief intelligence officer continued to report. Actually, the mastermind behind the killing of the celestial dragons this time was not Straw Hat Luffy. Marine hero Garp immediately jumped in triumphantly and said, Did you see it? Did you see it? Sengoku glared at Garp and signaled the chief intelligence officer to continue. The intelligence officer coughed and continued, Except Straw Hat Luffy, the one who killed the other 2 celestial dragons was Cheng Cheng. Besides, the one currently on the island is Cheng Cheng. And the pirate captain Kid, and everyone in the Black Justice Pirates. Sengoku gritted his teeth and looked at Garp and asked, Garp. Garp lost his footing and the chair lost its balance and fell to the ground. The chair made of precious wood fell apart instantly. Garp rolled his eyes and seemed to have been thrown badly and passed out. Warring States snorted helplessly and stopped arguing with Garp. With such a big thing happening now, it was not the time to complain, but to solve the problem first. General Kizaru, who was sitting quietly drinking tea and reading the newspaper, said calmly, In any case, 3 world nobles are dead, so we must not be able to do it without dispatching, right? If that's the case, then I'll take a trip. Warring States looked at Kizaru gratefully. It was rare that this guy, who was usually the most passive and slow at work, was willing to take the initiative today. He nodded and agreed with Kizaru's statement. Akainu said coldly, I'm going too. Kizaru can't do it alone. Don't forget that everyone from the Black Justice Pirates is on the island, so the captain of the Black Justice Pirates is probably also there. Sengoku was shocked. The mysterious man who intercepted Ace in Impel Down City escaped in the hands of Akainu and Aokiji. His strength was definitely not comparable to that of ordinary people. Then he looked at Garp who was lying on the ground pretending to be dead, wondering how to tell the old guy about Ace. Warring States walked slowly to the window and looked at the turquoise blue sea in the distance with rolling waves. He tapped the window edge with his index finger in a slow rhythm. After a while, he seemed to make up his mind and whispered, Inform Aokiji and let him go too. The chief intelligence officer was shocked. After so many years, when had he ever seen the 3 generals of the Marine headquarters dispatched at the same time? Once the 3 of them were dispatched, which pirate would survive? He immediately said, Yes, I will inform you right away. Kizaru took a deep look at Akainu Sakazuki, with a hint of sympathy and a hint of pity deep in his eyes. He stood up silently, the white cloak of justice on his back suddenly shook, swaying in the wind, and walked out of the conference room first. Sakazuki, I hope you can come back alive this time. Chapter 172 Pacifist in the Auction House. No one knew the content of the conversation between Pluton Rayleigh and Cheng Cheng. They only saw their lips moving slightly, and then Rayleigh laughed unbridled. Luffy and Nami still don't know Rayleigh's identity at this time and are making random guesses. But there was deep fear in Kid's eyes, and he said to himself, Pluton Silbaz Rayleigh. I didn't expect to meet the legendary character here. Rayleigh smiled and retorted, On this island, other people call me the Coder Laolei. It is very impolite to call me by my name casually. Nami said eagerly, Stop chatting. Now we are surrounded by thousands of Marines outside. We should think about how to rush out first, otherwise we will all die here. Usopp's legs trembled, and he swallowed, It's over, we're dead. Kid stood up first and walked out of the door. The closer the time is, the more Marines there will be. I will leave first and help you solve some problems. Straw Hat Luffy, we will settle our grudges someday. Luffy pouted with disdain on his face and muttered, who wants your help? Zoro, Sanji, let's go out and kill them all. Zoro, Sanji, Brook, and Nami all agreed in unison. Cheng Cheng stepped forward and said with a smile, it doesn't matter, we will go out together and nothing will happen. After seeing Cheng Cheng being so calm, Nami felt relieved and thought of Cheng Cheng's terrifying strength. Zeus on the side also said confidently, don't worry Nami, no one can hurt you as long as I am here. At this time, Frankie and Chopper, who had found the key, saw that Kemi had been rescued, so they released the other slaves who were imprisoned. Cheng Cheng asked them not to go out yet and wait 10 minutes until it gets quieter outside before sneaking out through the back door. Whether it was the maid, the purple-haired dancer, or all the other slaves, they were all extremely grateful to them. Usopp pushed his long nose and said, you're welcome, don't worry, I'm here. Chopper immediately gave Usopp a look of contempt. Advertisement. After seeing that Zalba's injuries were okay, Rayleigh felt relieved and said, my identity cannot be exposed for the time being, so I won't go out with you. We will gather directly at island number 13 when the time comes. After finishing speaking, Pluto and Rayleigh walked out of the side door gracefully on flip-flops. Cheng Cheng walked to the front and chuckled. Let's go out and see the majesty of Marine. After the group of them walked out of the auction house gate, a row of artillery not far from the door was already aimed at them. Countless Marines surrounded the entire auction house, blocking the way. The leader at the front was a Marine Lieutenant General. He shouted loudly with a loudspeaker, I advise you to surrender quickly. You're already surrounded. Don't make weak resistance. This will only make you die faster. However, before he could finish his words, the hot-tempered Luffy rushed towards thousands of Marines. Gong meng gong meng gong, scythe. Luffy's right leg instantly stretched out and threw Marine forward. In an instant, Marine in the front fell to the ground. Zoro followed closely with his double sword style. With his two swords dancing wildly, he quickly cut a bloody path through the Marine. Captain Kidd was also unwilling to be outdone. He stretched out his hand to activate the fruit's ability, attracting a large number of weapons, and led the Kid Pirates to charge out. Nami, who wanted to take a step forward to join the battle, was stopped by Cheng Cheng with a smile. Don't worry, you can just watch the show. Cheng Cheng raised his right hand and snapped his fingers. The ground shook instantly. Many unusually tall giant beasts appeared outside Marine, as well as other phantom beasts that exuded a domineering aura. Those phantom beasts were scattered outside the Marine encirclement. At this moment, it was like they had surrounded thousands of Marines, and then they attacked violently in an instant. The Marine encirclement of several thousand people was defeated in the blink of an eye, and the nearly 40 fantasy beast teams seemed to be in a deserted place without any resistance at all. Nami immediately recognized those with phantom beast abilities, covered her mouth and exclaimed, Black Justice Pirates. Brother Cheng Cheng, are your people here? Cheng Cheng nodded with a smile and said softly, General Marine will be here soon. I don't know how many will come, but if you really encounter him later, you can try to run to Kizaru. Nami subconsciously thought this was because Kizaru was the weakest, so he nodded solemnly. When the Black Justice Pirates appeared, thousands of Marines were all defeated in a short time, leaving no resistance at all. Cheng Cheng immediately said without any doubt, Nami, you first go to Island 13 to find Uncle Rayleigh and ask him to coat your boat. I will find you soon. Advertisement. The defeated Marines no longer threatened the Straw Hats. After Nami and the others agreed, they immediately rushed out and disappeared quickly. Cheng Cheng did not leave. His eyes caught sight of an unusually tall bear on the other side, Bartholomew Bear, one of the Shichibukai. At this moment, Big Bear is fighting with the Kid Pirate group. Kid is covered in blood and is suppressed by Big Bear without the strength to resist. As for the Black Justice Pirates, after wiping out Marine, they all stayed in place lazily, waiting for Cheng Cheng's next order, seemingly not caring about the upcoming General Marine. When Cheng Cheng carefully observed the Big Bear, he discovered that the palm of his hand was a laser cannon, and he did not hold the Bible, so he determined that the Big Bear was a pacifist and not the real person at all. Then Cheng Cheng flashed and came to Kid in an instant. The sharp blue sword light passed through the pacifist, splitting him in two, and exploded with a loud bang, sending smoke and dust billowing. Kid was shocked, so strong. He tried so hard but couldn't hurt the Big Bear. Unexpectedly, this man killed the Big Bear, one of the Shichibukai, with just a sword. Cheng Cheng said coldly, Kid, if you want to survive, you'd better join our Black Justice Pirates, otherwise General Marine will come soon and you won't be able to escape. Kid was seriously injured by the Big Bear, his whole arm was covered with blood, and he asked with gloomy eyes, Who are you? Cheng Cheng chuckled, I am the captain of the Black Justice Pirates. Kid took a breath. He didn't expect that the mysterious captain that everyone was speculating on was so young. No wonder he dared to kill the celestial dragon in public. But Kid looked at his companions and firmly shook his head in refusal. I am no longer afraid of death. If I die, I will die. This is my destination. Cheng Cheng said nonchalantly. That's up to you. I hope I can see you in New World in the future. Kid snorted coldly and stumbled out of here with the crew. Cheng Cheng slowly closed his eyes, his invisible domineering energy instantly turned on, and countless red dots of powerful aura on the island appeared in his mind. Among them, there are 3 of the most dazzling red dots. Cheng Cheng's eyes were gloomy, and then he burst into laughter. Kizaru was so capable that he even attracted those 2 people. Akainu, Aokiji, now that you're here, don't leave. Chapter 173. Tyrant Cheng Cheng immediately shouted, Lao Sha, Luo, you immediately lead everyone to hold Akainu and Aokiji away. You must wait until I get there. You must hold them back until you die. Wearing a yellow robe, Lao Sha smiled coldly and asked, if I accidentally kill General Marine, is it okay, Captain? Cheng Cheng chuckled and said, don't underestimate any Marine general. If one of you is really lucky enough to kill one of you, I will credit you with a great contribution. Lao Shalong laughed loudly, looked up to the sky and shouted, everyone in the 2nd Division, follow me. Luo's eyes were solemn. Kosha was still guarding the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree in Cayenne, so he was both the captain of the 3rd Division and the acting captain of the 1st Division. He was confident that it wouldn't be a big problem for them to hold down the 2 Marine generals, but it would still be difficult to kill the generals. However, thinking about General Akainu's crazy pursuit of him that day, if Cheng Cheng had not appeared in time, he would have died in Akainu's hands. He himself did not expect that the opportunity for revenge would come so quickly. Luo said hello and rushed out with the members of the first team. Cheng Cheng was not in a hurry to go there because he still had to find another important person. Seeing and hearing Sabo continued to search the island. Cheng Cheng was like a bolt of lightning, running on the moonwalk at high altitude on the island. Every time he encountered a powerful aura, he would fly over to check it out. For a moment, everyone noticed the powerful aura flying quickly at high altitude, but no one knew who this person was, and they all pointed at Cheng Cheng who was flying past. The pirates who were running around were afraid, secretly wondering if this was a newly appointed Marine general in the Marine headquarters who was searching for the criminal who killed the Celestial Dragon. At the same time, some pirates couldn't help but curse the guy who killed the Celestial Dragon in their hearts, causing them to suffer the same consequences and face the wrath of General Marine together. Cheng Cheng searched in several places, and the ones he finally found were all pacifists. He didn't talk nonsense, and just used an enhanced version of the turtle-style Qigong wave on each of these war machines. The pacifist, whose manufacturing value was comparable to that of a battleship, exploded on the spot and turned into a brilliant firework. Even the headquarters of Marine, a big company with a big business, will definitely feel pain for a while after knowing about it. Advertisement afterwards, Cheng Cheng went through some searching and finally found the real Bartholomew Bear holding a Bible on the crown of tree number 37. Da Shang, who was standing high in the sky, saw Cheng Cheng with an expressionless face, neither dodge nor move, as if he was waiting for Cheng Cheng. Cheng Cheng tapped his toes on the tree crown and stopped, and asked doubtfully, if you are still conscious now, you should know me, right? The big bear, who was nearly 7 meters tall, looked down at Cheng Cheng, but his voice was extremely gentle, with a shy tone like a boy next door. Master Instructor, of course I know you. I heard from Sabo that the water breathing you taught is amazing. Now there are many brave and capable generals in the army. Cheng Cheng looked at Da Shang's current state. His face was already like a robot. Although he said grateful and gentle words, there was no change in expression or emotion on his face. He laughed at himself. As the chief instructor, I am somewhat incompetent. Big Bear shook his neck slightly. General Instructor, you are very competent. I have wanted to meet you for a long time, but I didn't expect to meet you until today. You are as young and handsome as they said. Cheng Cheng sighed, changed the topic and continued to ask, what's your situation now? How long can you stay awake? Big Bear shook his head slowly like a machine. I don't know either. After meeting you, I will send the Straw Hats away safely, and I also made an agreement with the doctor. When I am completely unconscious, I will set the program to protect the Wanli Sunshine to the death until any member of the Straw Hats comes back. Cheng Cheng raised his head and looked up at the tyrant Big Bear. Fortunately, it seems that Big Bear still has self-awareness. This is enough, he said in a deep voice. Bartholomew Bear, if you believe me, I can free you from Vegapunk's control and restore your sense of freedom again. The tyrant Big Bear, a Revolutionary Army cadre lurking in Marine, shook his head again and said softly, it's impossible. The doctor is a scientist who has surpassed human intelligence for 500 years. He has already modified my body. No matter how good the doctor is, he can't save me. Vegapunk is indeed the genius with the highest IQ of mankind, the #1 scientist in the world government, and has a special status in the world government. He even unlocked the conditions for the transmission of devil fruit abilities and was able to make objects possess devil fruit abilities. Advertisement Cheng Cheng also had to admit that Doctor Who was a super genius. He had even secretly thought that if this doctor had gone to his previous world and learned the theoretical basis of physics in that world, he might be able to develop something like a time machine. Under normal circumstances, no one can solve Big Bear's current condition, but unfortunately, Cheng Cheng has the great holy grail in hand. Cheng Cheng smiled and said, don't worry, as long as you are willing to believe in me, I will use magic to defeat his science. Not long after, when the tyrant Big Bear, one of the Shichibukai, fell to the ground again from the height of the tree canopy, the corners of his mouth curled up, with a faint smile on his face. There are 2 more pale golden lines on the back of the hand holding the Bible. After being separated from Big Bear, Cheng Cheng finally felt a lot more at ease and no longer had any worries. He sneered in his heart, Vegapunk, sooner or later we will find you, an old fox. I want to see who you are. On the edge of the Sabo Islands, a terrifying battle is breaking out. The waves are rolling, the waves are surging, the red magma dyes the entire sea surface red, the blazing high temperature makes the seawater boil, hot bubbles are constantly emerging, and white mist rises. A majestic scene of burning the sky and boiling the sea. What's even more bizarre is that on the other side of the red magma sea is the bitingly cold ice surface. The magma and the blue ice form a clear dividing line that does not invade each other, and there are 2 heavens of ice and fire. A group of people led by Luo, including the snow demon bear Kabasi, the tattooed lion Basilius, the red flame tiger Sander, and the black wind demon wolf Lovell are besieging Marine General Akainu. Although they were outnumbered, they did not take advantage of Akainu. Instead, they struggled to hold on under Akainu's fierce attacks, and from time to time someone would be seriously injured. On the other side, the members of the second division led by Lao Sha were obviously much more relaxed, surrounded by layers of yellow sand. Godzilla Tori, King Kong Harua, and Behemoth Simon, these three giant phantom beasts, swung their fists at Marine General Aokiji wantonly. For a time, Marine General Aokiji had a tendency to lose ground. Lao Sha shouted loudly. Everyone in the second division, listen, the opportunity to make great achievements and become famous is right before your eyes. Kill General Marine, and you will be famous across the sea and become a legendary pirate. Chapter 174 Icebreaking Aokiji's expression became more and more ugly, and his eyes became more and more gloomy. He had heard about the Black Justice pirates before, and thought they were just on the same level as the Supernova pirates, so he didn't take it to heart. He just regarded this mission as a simple formality. After all, in the first half of this great route, is there anything else that cannot be solved by the three Marine generals working together? But it turned out that Aokiji was wrong. Now he is fighting against dozens of people, each of whom has the strength of a supernova, and even better. These people are all extremely rare Phantom Beast Devil Fruit capable users. Not only are they powerful, but the key is that they are not afraid of death. Their fighting styles are more brutal than the other, and each of them seems to have an immortal body. As soon as the three Marine generals arrived on the island, the three of them dispersed. Akainu caused quite a stir. As for Kizaru, after seeing him break a tree with his kick at the beginning, he was not seen either. After such a difficult battle, Aokiji suddenly realized that he had not even seen the Tianlong killer. We can't go on like this, otherwise, even the Marine General himself will probably be dragged to death by them. These phantom beasts are more resistant to beating than each other. Aokiji felt cold air gushing out from all over his body, stamped his feet suddenly, and shouted, Ice Age. Taking Aokiji's foothold as the center of the circle, a thick layer of ice instantly spread out on the ground, and the grass and air bubbles on the ground instantly froze. Everything within 1,000 miles radius was frozen. The behemoth Simon, who was relatively close to Aokiji, was instantly frozen into a huge iceberg. The other phantom beast species of the second division released their abilities one after another to fight against them. The blue-winged unicorn Lewis waved his huge wings and rolled up a hurricane in the air, and sprayed a stream of blue flames from his mouth, not at Aokiji, but at his teammate Behemoth. The blue flames instantly swallowed up the iceberg-sized behemoth, and the ice melted. Then the behemoth Simon let out a terrifying roar and broke free from the thick ice. The behemoth didn't give up, and hit Aokiji with its fist as huge as a meteorite, creating a strong hurricane. At the same time, Godzilla Toli did not show any weakness and followed closely. His thick tail more than 10 meters long roared over and broke a large tree numbered 46. Advertisement King Kong Hulua picked up the number 46 tree that was broken by Godzilla from the ground, held it in his arms, raised it high, used the tree as his weapon, and suddenly swung it towards Aokiji. Hidden in the corner was the black heavily armored Knight Kangang, with a black spear in his hand like lightning. Although he didn't take many shots, Aokiji had to be careful every time. Among them was a black spear with a tricky angle, which hit Aokiji's left knee. At first, Aokiji didn't pay too much attention, just treating it as an ordinary arrow. Later, Aokiji realized that something was wrong. His left leg gradually began to lose strength, and he could not turn the elements of his left leg into ice. After that, Aokiji carefully avoided every black spear. Lao Sha laughed excitedly, surrounded by rolling yellow sand. His figure was like the wind, and his two arms turned into two extremely sharp desert swords, slashing towards Aokiji rapidly. Aokiji, who had just transformed into a huge ice fist and broke the big tree of Vajra Hulua, once again gathered all his energy to fight against the menacing 1st Division Captain Lao Sha. Aokiji snorted coldly, spit out a ball of cold air from his mouth, transformed into an ice sword, and said coldly, King Alabasta said you were dead before, but I didn't expect you to transform from 7 warlords of the sea to the captain of the Black Justice Pirates. Crocodile, you are seeking death this time. During the flyby, Lao Sha smiled sarcastically, silly, haven't you seen the current situation clearly? I want to see who is seeking death. After saying that, 2 desert swords slashed at Aokiji. The ice blade collided with the desert sword, a strong hurricane broke out, and the frozen ground suddenly cracked. At the same time, 3 extremely cunning and strange black lightnings struck from the side of Aokiji's body in a glyph shape. No matter how Aokiji avoided it, he would definitely be hit by one of the black spears, so Aokiji could only choose to stay put. Lao Sha saw the right moment, his eyes were gloomy, his feet suddenly exerted force, and an extremely sharp desert blade burst out from the soles of Aokiji's feet. Aokiji, who had already predicted it through the hockey of seeing and hearing, dodged immediately. However, due to the injury to his left leg, he was still half a second too late, and was pierced by a sharp desert blade from the sole of his foot to his knee, causing blood to spurt out instantly. Aokiji roared angrily, and the ice blade in his hand expanded instantly, creating a deep bone-visible scar on Lao Sha's chest. Blood spattered everywhere and dyed the ground red. Lao Sha didn't feel any pain at all, but laughed heartily. After stuffing a fairy bean into his mouth, he rushed towards Aokiji desperately again. Advertisement Aokiji saw that Lao Shan's wounds were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and his heart was shocked. At the same time, Aokiji also found that the phantom beasts that he had just beaten to death stood up again, as if they were not injured. What exactly is going on? Aokiji asked loudly, but unfortunately the only responses he received were the huge fists of Vajrahulua and Behemoth, which smashed down in the air like Mount Tai weighing down the top. Lao Sha seized this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and his arms transformed into desert swords again, and he swept forward and slashed at Aokiji's injured left leg. With a flash of yellow desert sword light, Aokiji's left calf was cut off instantly and split into two. Aokiji endured severe pain and quickly used his powers to transform into an ice prosthetic leg using ice cubes. Just when Lao Sha was about to rush forward and attack again, he heard Cheng Cheng's voice, causing all members of the second team to stop their movements. Cheng Cheng stepped on the moonwalk and came through the void, shouting loudly, "Lao Sha, you all go to Akainu, leave this place to me." Although Lao Sha felt regretful in his heart that he would have been even closer to killing Marine General Aokiji, but he did not dare to disobey Cheng Cheng's order at all. In a few breaths, the 20-odd people from the 2nd Division all receded like the tide and quickly went to support the people from the 1st Division on Luo's side. Their opponent is Akainu, and the number of players is not as large as that of the second team. The fight is more difficult, and there have been many casualties. At this moment, Aokiji's face was covered with blood and he was in a miserable state. The white cloak of justice on his body had long since disappeared, he said coldly. "So you are the captain of the Black Justice Pirates. I didn't expect that the grandson of Garp who quit Marine half a year ago would now grow to such a height. Are you ready to show mercy and let me go, or do you want to kill me yourself to increase your bounty?" Cheng Cheng, who was carrying the Zhenhai sword, had a calm face and said calmly, "I won't kill you, you can leave. But from now on you'd better not show up at the Marine headquarters, otherwise I won't be merciful next time." Aokiji asked confused. "Why?" Cheng Cheng glanced at the frozen world around him and sighed. "You are one of the few Marine generals who can match that cloak. Besides, because you once let Luffy go, I won't kill him today, you." When Aokiji wanted to say something more, Bartholomew Bear appeared silently behind him. He looked back in surprise. Before he could speak, he was slapped away by the bear and disappeared. Big Bear said softly, "Old friend, feel free to travel to the farthest place in the world. The sea is not suitable for you." Chapter 175 Akainu's Justice. Cheng Cheng glanced at Dashang strangely, still unable to accept the huge contrast between Dashang's appearance and voice, and said with a smile, "You don't need to worry about Akainu. Go find Luffy and the others. After all, their current strength is still too weak, and their role in the subsequent summit war will not be very great. As we said before, let's send them on a trip." The big bear who had regained his consciousness smiled shyly, said goodbye to Cheng Cheng, and rushed towards Luffy and the others. Cheng Cheng took off the Zhenhai sword and held it in his hand, looking at Akainu coldly. His hair instantly stood up and turned golden, and his whole body turned into a golden light in the air. During the flyby, Cheng Cheng kept swinging his sword one after another, as if he was cutting the air aimlessly. When Cheng Cheng flew over Akainu, the weight of Zhenhai's sword in his hand already weighed tens of thousands of kilograms. On the sword body, golden sword light surged with murderous intent. Wherever Cheng Cheng went, the strong wind brought out separated the sea of magma and fire. Looking at Akainu who was covered in lava not far ahead, Cheng Cheng shouted sternly, "Akainu, this is your burial place." Immediately, the golden light transformed by Cheng Cheng came to Akainu in an instant, holding the Zhenhai sword upside down. He swung the sword and the air exploded. Akainu felt the extremely familiar aura at this moment and instantly guessed Cheng Cheng's identity. These people of Black Justice have shocked him. Not only are all of them the extremely rare Phantom Beast Devil Fruit, but they are also very resistant to beatings. Every time he cripples a person, it doesn't take long for that person to be alive and kicking. Appear before him. If not, those people would have been killed one by Akainu, but then Crocodile brought another group of Phantom Beast members. Only then did Akainu really feel the pressure and knew that these people were not easy to kill. At the same time, he was secretly shocked that Aokiji's aura suddenly disappeared. It wasn't until he saw the blonde-haired Cheng Cheng leaping over that he felt a sense of crisis. Unless Kizaru came to help, it would be difficult for him to kill Black Justice and the others. Facing Cheng Cheng's full sword slash, Akainu did not dare to take it lightly. He crossed his arms behind him and turned into rolling lava in front of him, trying to resist the sword. Boom! Advertisement a loud sound sounded, and Akainu flew backwards and hit the ground hard, creating a big pit. The ground shattered, and Akainu could not be seen. A mere pirate wants to teach me how to do things, what a big joke. Akainu's face changed slightly. He wanted to regain his dog head, but found that the magma was no longer under his control. He could only wave his left arm again and release the dog-biting Red Lotus again. Although Lao Sha was unwilling to do so, he thought it would be a pity to miss this huge opportunity to kill Akainu. Cheng Cheng's eyes were cold and bloodshot, and he said coldly, "Old dog Akainu, is this your justice?" After seeing others kneeling on the ground to pray, she also knelt down to pray, placing her right hand on her chest and covering the child's eyes with her left hand. However, the young mother who had just knelt down was so focused on comforting her son that she did not even notice that a huge column of lava was falling from the sky above her head. The crimson magma was instantly shattered by the light pillar formed by the turtle sect's qigong, and turned into tiny gravels that were harmless to everyone, scattered around everyone. Cheng Cheng put his hands together and instantly condensed a huge turtle-style qigong, rushing towards the lava. She didn't want her child to see this cruel and bloody scene, so she held her son tightly in her arms. The baby cried loudly and struggled with both hands and feet at the same time, as if to remind her mother to leave here quickly. For a time, everyone prayed more devoutly. Standing proudly in the air, Cheng Cheng looked as calm as Shisui. The golden sword light on the Genhai sword soared to tens of meters. With a flick of his wrist, the huge golden sword energy collided with the magma dog's head. Like a volcano erupting, the magma that shot into the sky penetrated the clouds, turned into flaming magma, fell from the sky, and hit everyone on the island irregularly. The people on the island all looked at the doomsday sky in panic. With nowhere to escape, everyone could only kneel down and pray to the sky, hoping that they could survive this disaster. You're so G crazy. Above the golden sword light, the water flow surged, and a sword light flashed by. The head of the magma dog biting the red lotus was cut off by Cheng Cheng with a sword. At the location of the magma fracture, a golden water flow formed a barrier, sealing the fracture. The other members of the Black Justice Pirates suddenly became even more excited. They launched their skills at the big hole and hit the target in time. Luo, who was originally a doctor, certainly had no objection to this. He immediately called out and led a team of people to rush over to save the person. Advertisement Cheng Cheng cursed angrily, and the surrounding area of the island was in flames. Burnt trees were broken from the middle and fell down with a crash. He shouted loudly. With a look of disdain, Akainu twisted his wrist, his bones cracking, and said righteously. Cheng Cheng shouted angrily. Akainu, old dog, are you crazy? There are many innocent people on this island, don't you know? Everything is for justice. As long as I can kill you, it is the greatest justice. Why not kill some useless ordinary people? Breath of water, cut the sea. With the protection of the Black Justice Pirates, the magma fists that were still falling from the sky were blocked by them either with their fists or with their bodies before they hit the ground. One of the mothers, who was holding a baby who had just turned 1 month old, was still breastfeeding her son and could not escape at all. But after seeing Cheng Cheng's rarely angry eyes, Lao Sha still led Godzilla Toli and King Kong Hulua to leave quickly and joined the rescue team. The people shouted loudly, "Angels are coming to save us! Angels are coming to save us!" Cheng Cheng waved his giant sword and sneered at the corner of his mouth, naive. Lao Sha, Luo, you lead everyone to save the people on the island immediately. Those who can be saved must be saved. Suddenly, dozens of meters thick hot magma erupted from the inside of the crater and rushed straight into the sky. The fire was so intense that the sky was dyed crimson at this moment. Now that there are no obstacles from those people, your death has come. I let you escape twice before, but this time, I will kill you. The red-hot magma suddenly formed a magma dog head with fangs, roaring towards Cheng Cheng unstoppably, as if it was going to swallow Cheng Cheng whole. Boom! At this moment, Akainu had transformed into a stream of magma from inside the pit and stood up again. He emerged from the sea of fire unscathed and snorted coldly. However, there was no movement in the big pit at this moment, and the ground bulged high, like a bull turning over. Akainu's entire right arm transformed into billowing crimson lava, emitting thick black smoke. He swung his arm suddenly and shouted sternly, "The dog bites the red lotus." Chapter 176 Complete Justice. Water breathing has a unique advantage in this world, because the water vapor in this world is so rich that it has almost become the main element in this world. In addition, the breath of water here is inevitably contaminated with the power of the sea, and its restraint on devil fruit users is comparable to armed hockey. The Genhai sword in Cheng Cheng's hand was originally made of Hailu stone. Coupled with the 3 blessings of armed color hockey and water breathing, it was a great restraint for other devil fruit users. Seeing another magma dog head flying towards him quickly, with its pupils expanding continuously, Cheng Cheng sneered, and water surged above the sword body. Cheng Cheng rushed forward and his whole body turned into a bright golden light. He held the sword upright in front of his chest. The golden sword light surged and he headed towards the magma at an extremely fast speed. A golden light flashed. The magma dog head twisted its body and swooped in. It was split in half from the middle and fell into the air. Akainu's face changed drastically. He didn't expect that this talent would grow to this extent after not seeing him for a short period of time. After the golden light slashed through the dog-biting red lotus, its speed increased instead of decreasing, and it rushed straight towards Akainu. Cheng Cheng raised the Genhai sword upside down, took a deep breath, and the golden sword light surged dozens of meters again, forming a huge 30-meter-long sword energy. He muttered silently, "Breath of water, enhanced version, starburst airflow slash." The sharp sword light slashed hard at Akainu. At this moment, although Akainu had regained control over the 2 dog-gnawing red lotuses, Cheng Cheng also approached him. There was no time at all, so he could only cover his entire body with armed domineering energy, cross his hands in front of his chest, and try to resist Cheng Cheng's powerful sword. Boom! In an instant, a huge 30-meter-long golden sword light slashed across Akainu's chest. A burst of brilliant sparks burst out from Akainu's arms. His whole body felt like his internal organs were shaking, and his body flew backwards like a cannonball. Akainu originally thought that after taking this sword, he would have some time to breathe. But it turned out that his idea was completely wrong. Cheng Cheng did not give him such a chance to breathe, and turned into a golden light again, faster than Akainu. He came behind Akainu in an instant, and swung out another sword with the force of wind and thunder. Advertisement Akainu was slashed into the sky like a sandbag again, followed closely by Cheng Cheng's golden light with another sword strike. Starburst Air Slash is a sword skill that has never been seen in this world, with a total of 16 hits. Meteor Volcano. After the first 15 sword strikes, Cheng Cheng, who has firmly locked Akainu's chi, can now feel Akainu's position at any time even if he closes his eyes. At this moment, the sword light on Cheng Cheng's Genhai sword did not continue to surge but shrank to only 3 meters in size. There was also a trace of purple electric light on top of the golden sword light, which seemed far less powerful than before. The golden sword energy entwined with purple electric light formed a crescent moon and shot out, tearing the air and making a harsh sound like a sonic boom. However, Cheng Cheng, holding the Genhai sword in his hand, easily cut through the magma again, and when he arrived 2 meters in front of Akainu, he swung his sword diagonally. But he was still too slow after all. As long as the first sword hits, the remaining 15 consecutive sword moves will roll in like waves, continuous and continuous. Akainu's clothes were all torn to pieces, and the white cloak behind him had long been chopped to pieces by Cheng Cheng with random swords. He was in an extremely embarrassed state, but he was not fatally injured. Cheng Cheng suddenly became furious. Akainu, you are crazy. Akainu couldn't dodge this last sword attack. For a moment, it was like the end of the world was coming again. This time the scope was larger than the last time. The last time it was only 2 small islands nearby, but this time the scope covered the entire Sabo islands. Moreover, the power of the first 15 sword cuts of Starburst Air Slash seems to be average. For a strong man of Akainu's level, it will not cause huge fatal damage, but the real essence and killing moves are hidden at the end, hit by a sword. Akainu, who was covering his left eye and had calmed down now, let go of his left eye. There were deep blood marks on the entire left eye, leaving only one right eye, and said sternly. Cheng Cheng said coldly and expressionlessly, if you hadn't escaped quickly, this sword would have been enough to cut off your head. After 15 swords, suddenly, a little more red light appeared in the sky above the dark clouds. Advertisement under Cheng Cheng's gusty wind and rain of Starburst Air Slash combos, Akainu was like a ball, rolling back and forth in the sky. Every time he thought of resisting, he was interrupted by Cheng Cheng's sharp sword energy, leaving him without any resistance. Akainu, who had a chance to breathe, clenched his fists, and his arms turned into rolling lava again. The surrounding temperature increased sharply, and the air became distorted. For the first time, Akainu finally showed a look of fear, his pupils dilated. This sword seemed different from the other swords, much more powerful than before. Unless Akainu dies in the middle of 16 consecutive sword moves, it will not stop. Justice in this world will never die. I want all the pirates on Sabo to die. Akainu's marine hat was split into 2 in an instant, and then a spurt of blood erupted from his entire face. Above the dark clouds, dense red fists of red magma penetrated the clouds, like meteorites, and smashed towards the entire Sabo islands. Unable to dodge, Akainu quickly retreated, trying to avoid the blow. The 2 magma arms swung backwards, spurting out like a volcano erupting. Akainu shouted angrily, "Big fire!" After seeing Cheng Cheng stop, Akainu had a chance to breathe and sneered. Your strength has indeed improved a lot, but if you want to kill me at this level, you are underestimating the justice of this world. Don't worry, I'll let you know what regret is. He screamed, covering his left eye with both hands, and a long bloodstain appeared on his face from his forehead to the corner of his mouth. Blood continued to flow out of his left eye, which looked extremely terrifying. The huge magma swallowed Cheng Cheng whole in an instant. Cheng Cheng, who stood proudly in the void, sneered, "Don't be too narcissistic. You can't represent the justice of this world." Then Akainu's arms turned into rolling lava, and he kept spraying lava into the sky, like a machine gun, as if he wanted to launch all the anger in his heart into the clouds, and he shouted angrily. The sky above the Sabo Islands, which was originally clear and clear, suddenly became dense with dark clouds. Strong winds rose, and the dark clouds in the sky and the sea surface on the ground continued to roll. Before Akainu could breathe a sigh of relief, a golden sword light suddenly flashed through the red magma, cutting through the surrounding magma like tofu. The golden sword light was extremely fast and powerful. Even Akainu was no longer as calm as before, and the sword light was getting closer and closer. Akainu swung his arms again, and released another large burst of fire, trying to block the forward speed of the sword light. Chapter 177 Movie King with Akainu, a super large-scale skyfire meteor. The 79 islands in the entire Sabo archipelago were all shrouded in red meteorites for a while, turning into a sea of fire, like a purgatory on Earth. Cheng Cheng shouted angrily, and a loud voice spread over the entire Sabo islands. Everyone in the Black Justice Pirates listens to the order and concentrates all efforts to destroy the magma meteorite and protect the people. After giving the order, no one in the Black Justice Pirates hesitated at all. Everyone no longer avoided the magma fist falling from the sky, but faced it head-on. In particular, the 3 huge Phantom Beast-type users, who were tens of meters tall, swung their fists to destroy the magma fist without giving in. Other crew members who were not that big rushed into the sky one after another, colliding with the magma fire fist, and bursting out with a burst of brilliant sparks. I don't know if they were stimulated by the Black Justice Pirates or for some other reason. Some of the big pirates who were just avoiding the meteorites or watching indifferently also collided with the falling meteorites. All the pirates present reached a tacit understanding. For a moment, the magma fists in the sky shattered and turned into tiny sparks, lighting up the entire sky. In the sky, there was a rain of magma and fire. After seeing this scene, the common people on the island stopped running around in a hurry, their expressions calmed down, and they knelt down and thanked the saviors in the sky and the voice that sounded like the sound of nature. Cheng Cheng was a little surprised. He found that the water of life in the Great Holy Grail, which had been exhausted, was rising rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. But at this moment, he didn't have the heart to pay attention to this. He just wanted to chop off Akainu's head. Suddenly, the golden sword light surged again and rushed towards Akainu. Akainu's whole body turned into a ball of lava. Not to be outdone, he collided with Cheng Cheng and said sternly, "You lil b asterisk 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 d. I, Sakaski, must arrest you today." In an instant, the two collided. Under the sky covered with dark clouds, I could only see a group of crimson fire and golden light constantly colliding, changing to a different position after each collision. The speed of the two people was so fast that they couldn't see their figures clearly, and they could only judge the intensity of the battle through the constant explosions in the air. The other side. Kizaru Yun calmly took care of more than 100 unknown little pirates, and then rewarded Captain Kidd with a light speed kick. Advertisement: Captain Kidd, who had a bounty of 300 million belly, was kicked and vomited blood and almost fainted. Soon after, the Marines who swarmed him were put in sea stone handcuffs and imprisoned. Kizaru, who had discovered the location of the Straw Hats a long time ago, was currently scolding the captured pirates. In addition to running around in circles to clean up these little pirates, he even personally carried an old man with inconveniences on his back and carried him. She was sent home. This moved the other Marines to the point of tears. In the battle between the Straw Hats and the pacifists, judging from the situation, they seemed to have the upper hand. They shouldn't die so easily, so Kizaru was still relieved. But now Kizaru frowned and saw the pacifist himself, Bartholomew Big Bear, flying over with a Bible in his arms. Not good. Bartholomew Bear is very difficult to deal with. The Straw Hats are definitely no match for him. No, I have to go there quickly, otherwise the Straw Hats have a bad guy and they won't be able to explain to that kid. After saying that, Kizaru turned into a golden light without hesitation and took the lead to fly towards the Straw Hats. The speed was a few minutes faster than Bartholomew Bear, arriving first. Bartholomew Bear's heart was also tight. That guy Kizaru usually looked very cheerful and wretched, but his fighting ability could never be ignored. He knew very well that this was a ruthless man who killed his master Zephyr. It would be too naive to think of him as a kind-hearted marine general. Now that Kizaru has noticed Straw Hat and the others, Luffy and the others are definitely in danger of death. No, we must not let Kizaru get close to Luffy and the others. Bartholomew Bear's body accelerated again. Kizaru, who possesses the fastest shining fruit, at full speed, did not expect to be so fast, and actually reached Straw Hat Luffy and his group ahead of time. For a moment, he was a little confused. He didn't know what to do. He could only stand proudly in the void and made a posture that he thought was extremely handsome. Luffy and Zoro, the two pacifists they were dealing with at the moment, were already exhausted. If Zeus hadn't released lightning attacks from the side, they might not have been able to deal with the pacifists who were like war machines. But despite this, those pacifists seem to be endlessly killing them. As soon as one is destroyed, a new one will come out in an endless stream. A new pacifist appeared just now. Before they could despair, they saw Kizaru, the general of Marine headquarters. Luffy and Zoro looked at Kizaru with extreme despair in their hearts. Advertisement Nami and the others also had dull eyes. Kizaru stood above them like a huge mountain, weighing them down and making them unable to breathe. At this moment, Bartholomew Bear quietly appeared behind them, holding a Bible in his arms. Zoro recognized it at a glance. This was Bartholomew Bear, not a pacifist. His wrists holding the swords couldn't help but tremble, but his eyes remained firm. Luffy suddenly roared heartbreakingly. "Everyone, run! Our strength is too weak now and we are no match for them. Everyone, run separately and just run for your life. We will talk about other things later, just run." However, this time, Nami and Sanji did not listen to Luffy's words and stared at Bartholomew Bear. Kizaru said lazily, "Hey, isn't this Bartholomew Big Bear? Just leave it to me to take charge here. You can go find other people. The Black Justice Pirates are still very powerful. Go and help Aokiji, Akainu and others." Bartholomew Bear did not answer, but slowly took off his gloves, stepped out, and suddenly slapped another pacifist who was exactly like him to pieces with his palm. Luffy, Zoro and the other Straw Hats were stunned for a moment, looking at Bartholomew Bear at a loss. Usopp murmured, "Is this me so cruel? Do you beat your own people?" Kizaru was also confused, thinking quickly in his mind, what on earth is going on? He looked carefully and found the golden lines on the back of Big Bear's hand, and he understood instantly. He smiled meaningfully. "Which one of us is the actor?" "Da Shang, I'm not telling you, your acting skills are a bit too much." On the other side, Zan Momomaru, who was carrying a huge axe on his back, came over. Kizaru knew that he couldn't continue watching the show, otherwise it would be unreasonable. He slowly raised his feet with a groan, and the golden light on his feet condensed more than 10 times slower than usual. Those who didn't know thought that Kizaru was accumulating power for some earth-shattering move. At the critical moment, Rayleigh held a long sword, his figure flashed like the wind, and slashed at Kizaru. Kizaru breathed a sigh of relief. "Old man, I've been waiting for you so hard." Kizaru's entire body flew backwards, hit the ground hard, spit out a mouthful of blood, and exclaimed, "I didn't expect it to be you, Pluton Silbaz Rayleigh." Rayleigh looked at the long sword in his hand that had not been used for many years with a confused look on his face, and fell into deep thought. He obviously just used the sword casually. Besides, I only chopped off your right foot. Kizaru, what do you mean when you vomit blood? Chapter 178 Akainu, Death Big Bear, one of the Shichibukai, leaned forward and leaned in front of Pluton Rayleigh. He didn't know what he said, but Rayleigh stopped stopping Big Bear and allowed Big Bear to slap Luffy and the others away one by one. Luffy, who almost collapsed, looked at Zoro, Usopp and the others disappearing one by one, and roared heartbreakingly, telling Nami, Robin and the rest to run away quickly. But in the end, they were all shot away by the Big Bear mercilessly in front of Luffy's eyes and disappeared. When only Luffy was left alone, Big Bear said softly, "Don't be sad, you will know the reason when we meet next time." Immediately before Luffy said anything, the Big Bear flashed, moved quickly behind Luffy, and slapped out a palm. The air was compressed violently, and Luffy was wrapped in bubbles and flew away quickly. At this time, Kizaru felt that there was no need to continue fighting with Rayleigh. His most important task had been completed. As long as the Straw Hats were not dead, the rest of the things had little to do with him. Kizaru raised his head and glanced at the sky in the distance, seeing a scene of annihilation with flames rising into the sky. He sneered in his heart, Akainu, Akainu. I wonder if you can survive this time? The other side. Above the clouds, Cheng Cheng, holding the Genhai sword, fought with the General Akainu for hundreds of rounds, and lost one of his left eyes. Not only was Akainu's strength unaffected, but he became more and more fierce, like a completely enraged mad dog. The battle has reached this point, both sides are exhausted and at the end of their tether. Cheng Cheng suddenly swung his arm, and the Genhai sword was filled with fierce sword energy, and he slashed hard at Akainu, instantly slashing a series of sparks on Akainu's arm. Akainu flew out again, and the two of them spread out in the air. As the battle progressed, Akainu became more and more shocked. This young man seemed to be less than 20 years old, but he was so powerful. In less than 2 years, he would definitely become an emperor of the sea again. Therefore, he had to nip this possibility in the cradle, looking at Cheng Cheng who was finally exhausted. Akainu finally breathed a sigh of relief. Otherwise, he would have been unable to hold on any longer. He looked at Cheng Cheng and said coldly, "Justice will always belong to Marine, you are no longer good." Cheng Cheng, whose cheeks were covered in sweat, really couldn't hold on anymore. He didn't expect that after transforming into a Super Saiyan, he could only fight to a draw with Akainu and not be able to kill him for a while. The only way to kill Akainu is to drag him to death, but his transformation state will end soon, so it is still somewhat impossible to consume Akainu alive. Advertisement. Cheng Cheng first casually threw a fairy bean into his mouth, then took out the Great Holy Grail and drank a large sip of water of life from the cup. Only then did he feel that a new source of water had appeared in his depleted body. Power the body. Akainu's face suddenly changed, and he shouted angrily, "Impossible, this is absolutely impossible, what on earth did you take? There's no way this kind of medicine exists in this world." Cheng Cheng, who soon regained his energy, sarcastically said, "You are right, because this is not from this world in the first place." As soon as he finished speaking, he no longer gave Akainu time to breathe, and turned into a golden light and slashed towards Akainu desperately. As the sword blade danced wildly, the golden sword light flashed, and the sky was once again filled with sword energy. After a while, Akainu began to lose ground. Deep blood marks appeared on his chest, thighs, and various parts of his body. The skin was torn and the flesh was dripping with blood. In some deep wounds, bones were faintly visible. Akainu turned into a blood dog. However, just when Akainu couldn't hold on anymore and wanted to escape, Kizaru turned into a yellow light and flew quickly towards Akainu. Akainu was instantly overjoyed and stopped thinking about escaping. Instead, he waved his arms again, transformed into lava and rushed towards Cheng Cheng, sneering in his heart. With the addition of Kizaru, it will definitely be easy to deal with Cheng Cheng. Akainu, who was covered in lava, snorted coldly, "It seems that your death has come." A flash of panic flashed in Cheng Cheng's eyes, then he forced himself to calm down and quickly covered it up. The momentum of his whole body surged, and the golden light flourished. Cheng Cheng shouted boldly, "So what if it's two marine generals, let's just fight." In an instant, a golden sun seemed to rise in the sky. Everyone covered their eyes as the golden light pierced them. Those who were watching the battle subconsciously lowered their heads to avoid the dazzling golden light. But all this still cannot escape Akainu's eyes. In his opinion, the more Cheng Cheng behaves like this, the more prepared he is to fight for his life. Although Cheng Cheng was terrifying at this time, with Kizaru's help, Cheng Cheng was almost certain to die. He smiled crazily with a ferocious face, "A pirate is a pirate, and death is your destination, go die in peace, this world needs justice." Kizaru, who transformed into a golden light, held the Tiankongyun sword, and his speed became faster and faster, almost exceeding the speed of light. He shouted loudly, "Akainu, let me help you." Advertisement. As soon as Akainu opened his mouth, he felt a sharp pain in his back. When he looked down, a yellow lightsaber penetrated his heart. Blood spattered everywhere, flowing down the tip of the sword and soaking Akainu's flowered shirt. Akainu endured the severe pain and twisted his neck forcibly, looking at Kizaru with confusion. Although Kizaru was usually unreliable at work, how could he betray Marine like this? Kizaru held down Akainu's shoulder with one hand, and held the Akainu sword tightly with the other hand and kept thrusting. He chuckled and added the last word to what he just said, "I'll help you go to the west." At the same time, Cheng Cheng's water breath exploded with all its strength, and the azure water flow surged on the sword body, forming a thin film of water. He suddenly rushed forward, dragging the Genhai sword to leave a long water trail in the air. Close to Akainu, Cheng Cheng rounded the Genhai sword and drew a very standard arc of water flow in the air, extremely elegant. Breath of Water, Enhanced Version, Water Melody Song 2. Akainu's body was separated, and the column of blood on his neck instantly gushed out like a spring. His head fell to the bottom, and he died with his eyes open. Cheng Cheng and Kizaru looked at each other, speechless, and both could see that the other was relieved. The expressionless Kizaru took a deep breath and said firmly, "Boy Cheng Cheng, you have to give me a couple of blows. One of Akainu and Aokiji will die, and the other will disappear. If my clothes are not dirty, that's it. It's unreasonable to go back to Marine headquarters. Cheng Cheng, who was already exhausted, smiled and said, "You are quite cruel to yourself." Akainu opened his arms, narrowed his eyes and smiled. "If you are not ruthless, you will not be able to stand firmly." At this moment, the golden light in the sky dissipated, and everyone below could finally open their eyes. Without hesitation, Cheng Cheng quickly slashed Kizaru's chest twice with his swords. Blood spurted out instantly. He raised his leg and kicked Kizaru hard to the ground. Everyone below only saw Kizaru slamming into the ground. Kizaru, who fell into the pit, raised the corners of his mouth. It seemed that making a deal with Cheng Cheng that day was the right choice. "Marine Fleet Admiral, haha, let's see who can compete with me." Then Kizaru opened the phone bug on his wrist and issued an order without any doubt. "Everyone, retreat immediately." Chapter 179. The fifth Emperor. The Marines who suffered heavy casualties immediately retreated after hearing Kizaru's order. There were more than 10,000 people who came with great momentum, but now when they retreat, there are only less than 2,000 people left, receding like the tide. Most of them were injured, and all of them were dejected, no longer as high-spirited as before. When they boarded the battleship again, everyone felt as if they had come out of the gate of hell and slumped on the ground with depressed expressions. Cheng Cheng did not let the Black Justice pirates continue to hunt those Marines. Instead, he asked all members to gather and count the injured. 2 people from the first team died, and 6 people from the second team died. All of them, including Cheng Cheng, were seriously injured. Cheng Cheng then gave some water of life to each of the seriously injured crew members, and consumed all the water of life in the Great Holy Grail. After this incident, Cayenne will inevitably be attacked by Marine with full force. It is basically impossible to continue to plant trees with peace of mind and be a carefree national master. Cheng Cheng, who was standing casually on the ruins, glanced at all the crew members and found that everyone's eyes were shining with light, without any trace of exhaustion after the battle. He said in a calm voice with a smile, "You are strong. I am proud of you. You may only know that you have blocked General Marine's progress. Of course, just that is something to be proud of. But I still have to tell you that because of the hard work of each of you and the sacrifices of the 5 brothers who died, I bought critical time, so together we achieved a record that even the 4 emperors could not accomplish." General Aokiji of the Marine headquarters was defeated, and General Akainu was killed. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and the air was silent for a while. At first, they thought they had heard wrongly, and then they burst into a burst of shocking cheers. Lao Sha, who was shrouded in a yellow robe, took off the veil covering his face for the first time. His eyes stared at Cheng Cheng with a strange brilliance. Then he looked up to the sky and laughed, seeming to be more happy than killing General Marine, and then said sharply, "Advertisement, as expected of my captain, he must be so domineering. What nonsense 7 warlords of the sea is, it's all rubbish." Shuya is also lawless. There is no trace of panic in her eyes. Instead, her face is flushed and her hands are shaking with excitement. Kabasi, who was squatting and wiping the sky, looked indifferent, scratching his head and looking at the sky, as if he was still digesting what Cheng Cheng said, and he still didn't quite understand what killing 2 Marine generals meant. Luo, who used to be one of the Shichibukai, now had his upper body completely ruined and the Madara dot hat on his head had long since disappeared. He could best understand the terrifying nature of General Marine. In Luo's opinion, it was extremely difficult for Cheng Cheng to tie with Akainu, but he didn't expect that he could actually kill 2 Marine generals. He looked at Cheng Cheng with burning eyes. Not only were his friends who were still in Impel Down City saved, but the entire sea might be set off by a huge tsunami. That afternoon, Marine headquarters. There were 10 Marine warships when they set out, but when they came back there were only 3 that were somewhat dilapidated. Other idle warships in the port immediately made room for these 3 warships. After all the boats stopped and docked, Kizaru, who was covered in blood and looked like a bloody man, stumbled down. By accident, his feet softened and he fell down the steps. On the clean and tidy bluestone, a large amount of blood suddenly appeared. Kizaru, who was already covered in blood, also knocked his nose crooked. The 2 female doctors behind him were so anxious that they helped Kizaru up. One of the female doctors with long wavy hair warned, "General Kizaru, your current physical condition is very bad. The amount of bleeding has exceeded 2,000 milliliters. Even if you are General Marine, you will die of excessive blood loss if you do not receive treatment in time." Standing up with difficulty, Kizaru was about to speak when another mouthful of blood spurted out, like a fountain. The blood dyed all the tree trunks in front of him red. His face was extremely pale, his eyes were hazy, and he looked like he was going to die at any time. His breath was weak, said, "No, you don't understand. You have no idea what happened on the island. I must report the situation to the Sengoku Fleet Admiral now. This is related to Marine's dignity." The 2 female doctors were doctors on the battleship. They generally would not step off the ship to participate in the war. At this moment, the 2 of them looked at each other and saw the admiration for Kizaru in each other's eyes. Advertisement as expected of Kizaru-sama, although he seems unreliable at ordinary times, I never expected that he would turn into an upright man when encountering a big problem. The 2 female doctors could only try their best to help Kizaru. Soon, 2 burly male nurses from Marine rushed over carrying a stretcher. The 2 female doctors reluctantly helped Kizaru onto the stretcher, and seriously told the 2 male nurses to be careful. Kizaru's current physical condition was very bad, and he would receive treatment as soon as possible after the report. After all, these 2 male nurses are tall and powerful. Kizaru is lying on a stretcher that is 3.5 meters long. They can still walk like flying and make the stretcher extremely stable. The blood stains spread from the gate of Marine Headquarters to the entrance of the Fleet Admiral Sengoku office on the top floor of Marine Headquarters. In the office, Sengoku, who was still drinking tea, chatting and spanking with Garp, looked at Kizaru's half-dead look and was suddenly shocked. He slapped the table, stood up and said sternly, "Go and call the best doctor, right now." Kizaru spoke weakly and shook his head. It seemed that he would die in peace if he didn't express what was in his heart. Garp put down the newspaper and stared at Kizaru, who seemed to be dying. He only saw that except for 2 deep sword marks on his chest, he had no other serious injuries. Sengoku immediately waved and asked everyone else to leave. Only the 3 of them were left in the conference room. Sengoku stared at Kizaru lying on the stretcher and asked, "General Perusalino, what happened on the island? Was it the 4 emperors who hurt you like this? Red hair, white beard, or Kaido? Where are Akainu and Aokiji? Why didn't you see them?" Faced with being asked so many questions in one breath, Kizaru had already typed up the manuscript countless times in his mind. Before he could speak, he coughed violently again, and a large pool of blood spurted out again. There was a look of fear in his eyes, and he murmured, "It's not the 4 emperors, it's the 5th emperor. He is too powerful. All of us underestimated his strength. I don't know where Aokiji went, but I saw with my own eyes that General Akainu had his head chopped off with his sword. All this happened before my eyes. He was so powerful and terrifying. He had risen from the old world and became the 5th Sea Emperor." Warring States took off his glasses and said angrily, "Who is it?" Kizaru was dying, as if he had exhausted all his strength before he said slowly, "Black Justice Pirates, Cheng Cheng." Chapter 180 bounty skyrocketed that afternoon. Everyone at the Marine Headquarters saw the roof of the top floor office suddenly explode, revealing a 100-foot-high golden Buddha with bright golden light. At night, the entire Marine Headquarters senior generals stayed up all night, and the meeting lasted until noon the next day. After the meeting, Sengoku announced several decisions one after another. Appoint Momosagi Gion and Shadow Kaju as the new Marine generals, and conduct a global recruitment at the same time to select Marine general candidates from all over the world. The death of Akainu was also announced. As for Aokiji, he only announced that he was performing a secret mission and did not mention much. The most important point is the bounty on the Black Justice Pirates. The bounty for all members has been greatly increased. The most important thing is that the bounty for Captain Cheng Cheng has been directly increased to 4.5 billion belly. Shock the world. The Black Justice is currently sailing slowly in a hidden sea area. An unprecedented grand carnival is taking place on the ship. Everyone is dancing and cheering. The aroma of wine is filling the air. There are tons of grape wine poured into the sea alone. Cheng Cheng did not participate in the carnival. He just poured a glass of wine and sat quietly on the bow of the boat, watching the waves rolling in front of him and the seagulls soaring. Shuya, who was standing aside, saw a seagull flying in to deliver a newspaper, and waved for the latest newspaper. She opened the newspaper excitedly and hurriedly read it. She knew very well that today's newspaper news would not be able to avoid the Black Justice Pirates. Sure enough, as soon as Shuya opened the newspaper, she saw Cheng Cheng's handsome profile picture on the headline. He was no longer the mysterious man whose face he couldn't see clearly before. She waved happily and said, "Master Imperial Master, you are the headline today." All this was expected by Cheng Cheng. He took a sip of wine and said calmly, "After all, we have done something earth-shattering." Shuya carefully read the detailed time introduction in the newspaper. A gust of sea breeze blew by, and more than a dozen reward orders fell out from the cracks in the newspaper and scattered on the floor. The other crew members who were drinking all noticed this scene, stopped making noise, and looked over excitedly, like primary school students who had just finished the exam and were waiting for the results, full of anticipation. A somewhat surprised Shuya squatted on the ground and carefully picked them up one by one. She was familiar with the names of everyone on the reward order. She cleared her throat and shouted loudly. Lao Sha, the man in yellow robe, has a bounty of 980 million belly. Trafalgar has a bounty of 1.25 billion belly. Kabasi has a bounty of 300 million belly. Godzilla has a bounty of Tori. The gold reward is 1.3 billion belly, and the Vajra Harua bounty is 800 million belly. Advertisement. After Shuya finished reading, violent cheers broke out instantly. The bounty of almost every member reached hundreds of millions of belly. Even Shuya herself, a member who had never participated in a battle, had 30 million belly. Then Shuya took out the last reward notice that she deliberately left behind, looked at Cheng Cheng and asked, "Guess how much reward you have?" Although it has not been officially announced to the outside world yet, this is already a certainty. Shuya still shook her head. Believing that they would not involve Vivi and the old King Cobra, they threw the wine glass into the sea, picked up a bunch of water splashes, and whispered. Cheng Cheng thought silently in his heart. Cheng Cheng sneered in his heart. Apart from the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree, Yudi didn't care about anything else at all. As for the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree, even if it was destroyed with his own hands, it was impossible to leave it to Marine. Opening positioning and starting the transfer process. Close black lens bracket. From this day on, the Black Justice Pirates became famous all over the world. On this day, the entire sea shook. Whether it was the first half of the Grand Line or the New World, everyone was discussing one person's name at the same time, and that was Cheng Cheng. Haha, no matter whether they are 4 emperors or 5 emperors, they are all pirates after all. No matter how big-hearted Cheng Cheng is, his head is buzzing. Good guy, this is too much. The red-haired bounty is only 4 billion. How come he surpassed the 4 emperors overnight? He is also the eldest brother of Luffy of the Straw Hat Pirates, Sabo, the second in command of the Revolutionary Army, and Ace, the captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates. Shuya, stop hunting for treasures in the short term. You can slowly hide near the Impel City and wait for me over there. Garp, who was sitting in a dark corner, couldn't see his face clearly. Now he knew that Ace was secretly captured by Marine, and the Marine headquarters had discussed using Ace's death to scare those pirates who were ready to take action. Could it be that he, a majestic Marine hero, would rebel? System, teleport to Cayenne immediately. Everyone undoubtedly praised Cheng Cheng as the 5th emperor who rose in the old world. Advertisement suddenly, a bolt from the blue flashed through Garp's mind. Shuya nodded in agreement without hesitation. In the quiet and dark office, only Garp's cold and calm voice came. If you have the ability, just go and kill him. My son and my grandson are all yours to kill. Garp, I have to take action this time, you'd better not stop me, even if Cheng Cheng is your grandson. Open black lens bracket as you command, sir. Close black lens bracket pirates around the world have become more and more ready to move, and their numbers have become larger. Countless newcomers have begun their own sailing adventures. Cheng Cheng sat up straight in an instant, became energetic, and said exaggeratedly, it can't be 4 billion, right? His strength has grown to an astonishing level. With his own strength, he defeated the 3 generals of Marine headquarters and disgraced General Marine. Cheng Cheng continued to boldly guess higher, 3 billion? Cheng Cheng, who was lying on the bow of the ship, didn't care about this and said casually, we have killed 2 Marine generals, so the reward must be more than 2 billion. The day before Cheng Cheng quit Marine, he told him that Ace would lose to Teach, be imprisoned and impelled down, and then be executed and beheaded. According to relevant sources, the Black Justice Pirates already have 2 powerful pirate groups, the Drake Pirates and the Hawkins Pirates. In addition to all of its own Phantom Beast members, all other members have exceeded 3,000 people. Warring States said angrily, if I had known that Cheng Cheng's strength was growing so fast, I wouldn't have let him leave Marine no matter what I said that day. In just 6 months, I didn't expect to become the 5th emperor. After Marine headquarters Sengoku saw this news, he slapped his palm down and the entire newspaper shattered into pieces, turning into confetti flying in the dark office. More importantly, Ace has been detained and impelled down for more than a month. He, a grandfather, only knew the news. Why did Sengoku hide it from him? It seems that you were really worried about Akainu's death. Shuya continued to read the news in the newspaper and continued to read in a clear voice. Currently, Marine Fleet Admiral Sengoku and Hero Garp have led the newly appointed Marine Generals Momosagi Gion and Cha Dugai, and are leading the army to Alabasta, preparing to encircle and suppress Here We Are. With a smile on her face, Suya added, it's 4.53 billion Baileys. Shuya smiled and shook her head. Chapter 181 The whole world is shocked. Marine headquarters, in a quiet courtyard. Tuanzi practiced sword practice very quickly this morning. He held the interpreter and the dark chaser tightly with both hands. The sword was not unsheathed, but it was whistling like the wind, and the sword energy was wanton. The other dragon-slaying sword is like a spiritual bird, circling up and down around Tuanzi. It doesn't seem to have any lethality, but the trajectory of the sword is like that of an antelope hanging its horns, flown like clouds in flowing water. Since Tuanzi entered the Marine youth camp for the first time, he has never been there again. It's not that he's afraid of the so-called geniuses inside, but he really feels that they are too weak. He was not worthy of being allowed to draw his sword at all. If he hadn't promised his master not to draw his sword and fight, he could actually compete with that female instructor. Tuanzi's sword training speed was much faster this time than before. She jumped up, stepped on the Dragon Slayer blade twice in the air, and landed lightly on the bluestone on the ground. Then Tuanzi immediately put away the knife and hurriedly grabbed the newspaper that he had read countless times. The headline on the newspaper was Cheng Cheng's extremely handsome portrait. Tuanzi read it carefully from beginning to end, giggling as he read, as expected of my master, the rising 5th emperor of the old world. Hearing this title, he is so domineering. Now that master has become the 5th emperor, doesn't his status also improve? He is the founding disciple of the 5th emperor, ha 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 ha. Tuanzi thought of another thing and couldn't help but laugh. His eyes turned into crescent moons, and his eyes flashed with light. Master's identity has been exposed now. Doesn't that mean that master must not be able to stay in the rain any longer? Master will be coming to pick me up soon? Although Master Garp is also very kind to me, I always feel that I don't feel at ease when I am by master's side. Tuanzi carefully folded the newspapers neatly, lay on the stone table, supported his already voluptuous face with both hands, and looked quietly at the white clouds in the distance. A small island somewhere in the New World. The red-haired pirates who have been wandering on the sea for a long time will always find a small island every once in a while, hold a grand bonfire banquet there, and drink happily. At this moment, the red-haired man was drinking wine alone, sitting on a stone, holding a latest newspaper in his hand. He looked at the sea in the distance and murmured, I didn't expect that I still underestimated you, Cheng Cheng, the rising 5th emperor of the old world. On the Moby D*K, Whitebeard was sitting on a chair with drips inserted all over his body. He was not too shocked when he learned the news that Cheng Cheng had become the 5th emperor. The defeat of the 3 Marine generals did not make his heart tremble, and his eyes remained calm. Advertisement after decades of ups and downs, Whitebeard has seen too many ups and downs. Rox, Roger, Bullet, Zephyr, these former heroes have all slowly fallen into the dust over the course of history. He sighed deeply. After scanning around the boat, he still didn't see the 2 children. He murmured in a deep voice, Ace, Marco. New World, Toddland Kingdom, Cake Island. A golden light flashed above the clouds. Cheng Cheng had long been accustomed to the physical discomfort during this teleportation. After briefly identifying the direction, he swooped down over Cayenne and broke through the thick sea of clouds. Kosha, who was sitting cross-legged under the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree, suddenly frowned. When he looked up, he thought someone was attacking Cayenne and was about to take away the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree. He instantly transformed into Thanos and became alert. The country of peace. We have no choice but to move by force. Sengoku has already led a large number of marines over. If we hold on here, the rainy land will soon turn into a battlefield. Thank you for your hard work. You can be free from now on, pack up your things and we are ready to evacuate. Cheng Cheng walked slowly to the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree, gently stroked the trunk of the tree that exuded a faint golden light, and said helplessly. Doctor Strange's blessing, Benedict Cumberbatch's blessing, and the ancient wizard's blessing, you must succeed. After Kaido put down the newspaper, he looked up to the sky and laughed. This guy actually killed a Kainu. He is not weak. It seems that I have time to learn how strong this kid is. Charlotte Linlin took the newspaper and looked carefully. She soon saw the small white cloud and said angrily. I didn't expect that Zeus would actually come to them. Does this new 5 emperors want to start a war with me? Cheng Cheng flicked his wrist, picked off a golden leaf, and gently rubbed the golden veins on the surface. He thought that when he saw Tuanzi in the future, he would give it to her as a souvenir. After all, that girl also grew up watching the magical beast Spirit Tree. After seeing the white-haired boy in the newspaper being called the 5th Emperor, Charlotte Linlin slammed the table, causing the table made of cake to shatter in an instant, and sneered. Charlotte Linlin, who was holding a camellia party, was eating sweet cream pastries and holding the latest newspaper in the other hand. After a while, after seeing clearly who was coming, and realizing that it was the national master, he relaxed. Is this young boy worthy of being crowned emperor alongside me? What's going on? Isn't this space incapable of growing living things? Advertisement after Cheng Cheng landed lightly on his toes. He glanced at everything on the balcony. He obviously hadn't left for long, but it seemed like he had been gone for a long time. He patted Ko Sha on the shoulder and whispered. Cheng Cheng just wanted to transfer the Fantasy Beast Spirit Tree directly to the space ring, but he suddenly discovered that the desert in the inner space of the ring was full of life. Over the rainy ground, the tall Katakuri read the news report carefully, and suddenly found the figure of Zeus in a corner. Although there was only a tiny silhouette of his back, he was already very sure that this was Zeus. If this is the case, everything we have done for people like them before will be in vain. We would rather destroy the spiritual tree than leave it to marine. Kosha stood up and said, I know I can't stay here any longer. My things have been packed and we can leave at any time. But if we leave, what will happen to this spiritual tree? We can't take it with us, right? Watching the daily news has long been a habit for her, which can add a touch of happiness to her Camellia Club. Ko Sha also read the newspaper and was extremely anxious, but he had no choice. His biggest task was to guard the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree. After all, the safety of this tree was even more important than his own life. In recent days, because she couldn't find Zeus, her temper had become even more irritable, and few others dared to persuade her. Mom, look here, Zeus seems to be here too. The others suddenly fell silent and said nothing. Cheng Cheng glanced at the time gem set on the ring and fell into deep thought. Could it be because of this gadget? After randomly creating a space of 10 square meters for the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree, Cheng Cheng nervously clasped his hands together and muttered silently. As soon as he said it, Cheng Cheng used his mind to sort out the things in the space ring. Gold, silver and jewelry were piled up into a small mountain. The originally small space now had an additional ship, the Wanli Sunshine, which made the space very crowded. If the doctor in Marine discovered any secrets, it would be a disaster for all pirates in the world. Why didn't I notice in just a few days that this small desert almost turned into a forest? Then Cheng Cheng was overjoyed. Since other plants can also survive, then the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree can also be regarded as a kind of plant. There is hope. It is covered with Sustanche deserticola, rhinoceros horn, aloe vera, green bell, lithophora, and cacti, which are plants that can only survive in the desert. You have obviously done experiments before? Chapter 182 A Special Farewell? I don't know which god heard Cheng Cheng's sincere prayer. This time, the magical beast Spirit Tree entered the space ring. In an instant, a space the size of 2 football fields was filled with brilliant golden light. The Phantom Beast Spirit Tree floats quietly in the sky 1 meter above the ground. Dots of golden light drift down from the branches and leaves. The branches and leaves of the tree are not withered, and it looks no different from the outside world. The only difference is that the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree now has a quieter atmosphere and looks more sacred. Cheng Cheng instantly breathed a sigh of relief and his face relaxed. As long as he could carry the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree with him, many things would be easier. At least no one would be able to snatch the Spirit Tree away, and Kusha wouldn't have to waste his time up here. Ko Sha, who watched the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree disappear from in front of him, was surprised, but he didn't ask anything. For him, there were too many secrets in the master's body. If Cheng Cheng hadn't taken the initiative to explain, he would have made up his mind and saw and heard nothing. What happened next was undoubtedly a lot easier. Cheng Cheng and Kosha walked to the underground vault together and took away half of the treasures in the Cayenne. In the end, they left about 500 million belly to the deputy store manager Hans. He was told that the remaining money should continue to be used as funds for tree planting activities. When the money runs out, the activity will end. As for other things in the casino, he can just follow Princess Vivi's arrangements in the future. Deputy Store Manager Hans, who has been experienced in the field of relationships for many years, soon realized that Cheng Cheng was arranging funeral arrangements. He pulled the Imperial Master's arm with tears and snot in his eyes, with a look of reluctance on his face. I keep saying that the Imperial Master is a good person. Without the Imperial Master, it would be like a sunny day without the sun, and the fish without the sea. After Cheng Cheng finished these things, he sighed with emotion, closed the door gently and left without any nostalgia anymore. He stepped on the somersault cloud and turned into a golden light across the sky. After packing up their things, Cheng Cheng and Ko Sha left the rainy land together. Before leaving Alabasta, Cheng Cheng had to go to the palace. If he didn't give the old king instructions, I'm afraid the old king would also suffer unhappiness, small involvement. With a wave of his hand, all the items in the room disappeared and were taken into the space ring by Cheng Cheng. They were afraid they would never come back to this room again. Princess Vivi asked in confusion, "What are you doing? Do you want us to escape too?" Advertisement tonight, you ask everyone in the palace to evacuate and don't leave anyone in the palace. At that time, Tuanzi still held a grudge against Ace. After seeing the doll, he suppressed his anger and put it away. Glancing around, I saw the pink princess bed. Various small dolls and rag dolls were lying quietly on the bed. There was also a pink doll that Ace gave to Tuanzi. Cobra stood up and said sincerely, "The national preceptor has done so many things for this country. If you say this now, it will be a slap in my old face." They had obviously heard about Cheng Cheng, and they never expected that Cheng Cheng would do such an earth-shattering thing. They were hurriedly discussing how to deal with the incoming large number of Marines. With a muffled bang, a big crater was made in the desert, and sand and dust flew into the air. The old King Cobra squinted his eyes and took a deep look at Cheng Cheng. He seemed to have guessed what Cheng Cheng was going to do and said, "I have wronged you, master." Cheng Cheng said with a smile, "Of course, Fleet Admiral has personally taken action in the Warring States period. No matter how many soldiers come, the outcome will be the same. I am here to say goodbye to you, but even if I leave, it will definitely have an impact on Alabasta." Cheng Cheng said slowly, "My lord, I appreciate your kindness, but there is really no need for the soldiers to make unnecessary sacrifices." Cheng Cheng smiled slightly, "It's just a little effort." Then the golden light crashed straight into the palace, and the explosion shook the earth and the people in the city woke up. The old King Cobra said solemnly, "Master, what are you going to do now? Fleet Admiral Warring States and Hero Garp, as well as the two newly appointed Marine Generals Momosagi Gion and Cha Dugai, and many Marines. The general is on his way, and this time basically all the elite are dispatched. Facing them, Alabasta's soldiers are absolutely incapable of fighting. I've already asked all the soldiers from across the country to gather in the rain, but they probably won't be able to stop Marine for too long. We still have to think of a foolproof strategy." Cheng Cheng said to Ko Sha, "Wait for me here for a while, there are some important things I forgot to take." General Thanos lay in the pit and shouted, "Master, it's very comfortable here. I'll wait for you here." Advertisement. Suddenly, the dark clouds above the royal city shimmered with golden light, breaking through the dark clouds and dragging a very long golden trajectory, like a comet falling into the world and hitting the earth. Cheng Cheng, who stood proudly on the somersault cloud, shook his head helplessly and sighed. What kind of trend is this? After returning to the sky above Cayenne, Cheng Cheng did not alert anyone else in the casino. He just walked down from the balcony and pushed open the dumpling room. "Tuanzi, it seems it's time to pick you up, otherwise it will be dangerous to stay at the Marine headquarters when the war on top starts." That night, dark clouds enveloped the entire royal city, without any moonlight. The entire royal city was immersed in darkness, and everyone fell into a deep sleep. After seeing Cheng Cheng and Ko Sha push the door open and enter, Princess Vivi's eyes instantly turned red. She threw herself into Cheng Cheng's arms and said with choked sobs, "You finally came back. Are you injured? Why did you go to fight with General Marine? Those people must not be messed with, and I also heard that you killed 2 celestial dragons. You were really messy." Cheng Cheng could feel Princess Vivi's real concern. He rubbed her head and said with a smile, "Tianlong and General Marine are both human beings. There is nothing we can't mess with. So what about General Marine? I didn't kill 3 of them, too." Kosha was also very quick. Without saying a word, he jumped directly from the high school, which was hundreds of meters away. When he fell, he turned into Thanos form in the air. Especially the pile of spices piled in the corner, Cheng Cheng would be smoked every time he came in before. The two of them stepped on the somersault cloud and stopped in the air just after flying out of the rain. Maybe Marine, who has nowhere to vent his grievances, will vent his anger on the entire Alabasta. Alabasta will also be affected by this incident. I'm really sorry. Cheng Cheng couldn't laugh or cry, and finally let this short middle-aged man become the store manager. Hans cried even harder in an instant. Not long after, Cheng Cheng and Kosha arrived at the palace. The old King Cobra was discussing matters with several close ministers and Princess Wei Wei in the study. The floor is covered with a long-haired white feather carpet printed with Poseidon-like images. This piece is worth 3,000 belly. Cheng Cheng personally selected it for Tuanzi. The other furniture in the room was made by Cheng Cheng and Tuanzi according to Tuanzi's specifications. Purchase based on your preferences. The entire royal city was instantly illuminated into a golden color. Chapter 183. Encirclement and Suppression. Early the next morning. Around the ruins of the royal palace in the royal city, there was a sea of people, and many people gathered to watch. Yesterday, the palace was tall and majestic, but now it has completely collapsed, especially a huge pit appeared in the middle of the palace. Countless people pointed at this and discussed continuously, and a large number of people looked sad and cried loudly in front of the palace. Their relatives and sons were all working in the palace. However, after such an earth-shattering event happened, what else would happen to their relatives if they weren't in danger? In this case, all they want is to find the whole body of their loved one, which is the best result. Rumor has it that the old king did some evil deed that angered the angels, so he unleashed this thunderous wrath. But that afternoon, the ministers in the palace issued a statement explaining the ins and outs of the matter, which was hung at the entrance of the city wall so that everyone could clearly see it. Ever since the national counselor Cheng Cheng eradicated evil for Alabasta, he saved all the people from fire and water and was deeply loved by the people. But now he actually killed the Tianlong people and beheaded the marine generals, completing an unprecedented and shocking feat and committing a heavenly crime. The crime of defying is really hateful. Therefore, His Majesty the King decided to immediately send troops to encircle Yudi and arrest the imperial advisor. Who knew that the imperial advisor Cheng Cheng was so angry that he cut the entire palace into rubble with a sword? His Majesty the Kingdom was protected by all the ministers and his legs were injured, almost died. From now on, Cheng Cheng will be dismissed from his position as a national advisor, and Cheng Cheng will be arrested nationwide. If he is caught, he will be rewarded with a special bounty of 100,000 belly. Attachment. The death toll is being counted. According to incomplete estimates, the number of casualties is less than 1,000. When this notice came out, the people present's sympathy for this disaster in the palace instantly disappeared and turned into endless anger. Some people ignored the obstruction of the palace guards and tore down the notice with all their strength. They swarmed up and stamped the notice on the ground. The yellow notice was instantly trampled to pieces. Everyone cursed angrily. King Cobra, you are a coward. The imperial preceptor was so anxious to cut off the relationship when something happened. No wonder the imperial preceptor would chop down the palace with a sword. You deserve it. Why don't I chop you to death? What an ungrateful piece of shit. I'm really d off. Without the imperial master, we would have been killed by that Shichibukai a long time ago. There would be no chance of surviving until now, and the old king would not be able to sit on the throne as firmly as he does now. Cobra, have you forgotten how the imperial advisor turned the tide on his own outside the city and blocked Kusha's 700,000 rebel army? If I had known that you were so timid and afraid of getting into trouble, I shouldn't have saved you in the first place. Next, someone suggested that they should go to the palace to curse. Even if they could not hurt the old king, they should still disgust him. Advertisement immediately, there was a response from the whole city. Everyone went to the ruins of the palace to scold the king loudly. The palace guards seemed to have discovered their conscience, and they turned a blind eye to the people who spoke unkindly, and only tried to dissuade them verbally, saying, "Don't be like this, it's not good, are you thirsty?" and other caring words. However, no one really wanted to go to the king and want to beat him up to vent their anger. When everyone was tired of scolding, it was time to go back to eat, sleep, and continue scolding the next day. The palace ignored the scolding outside, as if it didn't know about it at all. On the third day, the old King Cobra appeared in front of everyone in a wheelchair. The first thing he did was to announce his abdication, and Princess Vivi became the next queen of Alabasta. People all over the city cheered and shouted Queen Vivi's name loudly. Because they knew from the grapevine that Princess Vivi had always been opposed to the arrest of the national preceptor, and was even imprisoned by the old king. The people, whose anger dissipated and no longer yelled and cursed, began to actively help rebuild the palace. On the fourth day, Fleet Admiral Warring States led thousands of marines to surround Rainland and ordered Queen Vivi of Alabasta to send troops for reinforcements. After Queen Vivi took the order, she led the Chief Minister Ikaram and 10 palace elites to reinforce Yudi, and the journey was slow and leisurely. In the rainy place, in front of Cayenne, although Fleet Admiral Warring States had already guessed that Cheng Cheng was likely to escape, some necessary formalities had to be taken, otherwise there would be no way to explain to the Tianlong people, and the hearts of other marine officers would be chilled. On the top floor of the Cayenne, there is a lying banana crocodile sculpture with its mouth wide open, as if it wants to swallow the world. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, Hiro Garp, and the two newly appointed Marine Generals Momosagi Gion and Ogado Kaju, wearing white coats of justice, stood proudly in front of the Cayenne. Now they all have a headache. The entire Cayenne was surrounded by thousands of people, forming a human wall 10 meters thick. Everyone glared at them without giving in at all. No Marine can enter Cayenne to search. Looking at the determined eyes of the people in front, Fleet Admiral Sengoku sighed. Garp, what do you think we should do? The purpose of our marine existence is obviously to protect the people, but now we seem to have become heinous bad guys. Advertisement Marine hero Garp sighed and sneered. Now, whether Marine's existence is to protect the celestial dragons or to protect the people of the world, you know better than me. Zhang Guo's body trembled slightly and he wanted to retort, but he was speechless. He knew what Cheng Cheng had done in Alabasta after he became the national counselor, but after seeing the resolute attitude of these people with his own eyes, he was still shocked. What kind of kindness would make them risk their lives to fight against Marine? On the left side of the Warring States period is the new General Momosagi. His specific age cannot be determined. He has a charming figure. He only wears a pink short-sleeved shirt with billowy waves. He wears very short shorts on his lower body, revealing his fair and extremely long legs. Stand there straight. On the outside of the thigh, there's a huge black spider tattooed. Especially the pair of charming eyes that attract people's attention, it looks even more enchanting and charming, like a female seductress who has been practicing for thousands of years. During normal marine missions, she doesn't use her hands most of the time. The slightest movement of her seductive eyes will make those pirates fall into the trap or kill each other. Even the other new marine general beside her, Sabo, pursued her 100 times in confusion, but she still ignored him. Moreover, very few people inside Marine have seen her actually take action, so the extremely long sword at her waist, Jinbaluo, is rarely used. This sword, named after the patron saint of the sea, is rarely used by the world. Familiar. Although few people have seen her take action, since she and Sabo were able to become general candidates before, their strength is definitely stronger than that of ordinary lieutenant generals. Momosagi took a step forward with his slender white legs and said softly, "I didn't expect that the Imperial Master would be such a heroic figure. I really want to meet him. Fleet Admiral, how about I go inside and check it out myself? It's just a formality anyway." Warring States frowned, but nodded slightly. The short stature wearing a yellow suit also took a step forward, approached Mr. Momosagi and said in a hoarse voice, "I'll go too." Momosagi looked back at him and said softly, "What? Are you afraid that I will get hurt? Or are you afraid that I will be snatched away by the Imperial Master to become the wife of the village?" Only then did the T-Dolphin smile and take a small step back without saying anything else. Momosagi pointed his toes and stepped on the moonwalk. His figure was like the wind, leaping over the heads of the people in front and landing on the nose of the banana crocodile. She stopped and looked around carefully. Then she walked around the balcony with elegant steps, and finally sat down on the chair where Cheng Cheng often sat on the balcony. She closed her eyes and felt it for a while. Her eyes moved, her lips moved slightly, and she murmured, "What a strong sword spirit." Chapter 184 Daughter Island. Momosagi just stood on the balcony for a while and did not go downstairs. When they were outside, they had already confirmed with their knowledge that Black Justice and others were not here. The employees who are still staying in Cayenne are just ordinary people. Fleet Admiral had no choice but to retreat. Sengoku ordered to retreat. He couldn't kill some ordinary people to vent his anger. Sengoku couldn't do this kind of thing yet. When they, the large marine force, left the city and just walked out of the Rainland, they met Queen Vivi and her party who entered the Rainland. Warring States just took a deep look at the dozen or so people who came for reinforcements, and left without saying anything else. Queen Weiwei's expression was firm, and she looked at Warring States without giving in. 4 days ago. Daughter Island, this place is lush with vegetation and isolated from the world, as if you have entered a primitive forest. In a flash of golden light, Cheng Cheng appeared over the edge of Daughter Island. He quickly landed firmly on the ground and observed everything around him. I took a deep breath of fresh and pure air and looked at the surrounding towering trees and entwined vines. Most of the plants were large leaf grass and trees, a bit like a tropical rainforest. The lush flowers and plants intertwined into a green maze. After he and Kosha left the Rainland together, he asked Somersault Cloud to take Kosha to the Black Justice, and he was teleported here directly through the system. The most terrible thing is that the system's check-in mission location this time is actually the bathing pool at the Empress's home. When Cheng Cheng heard about this mission, he became furious and asked the system sharply what it meant. Cheng Cheng has been an upright man throughout his life. Is he the kind of person who has to go to other people's bathhouses just because he has to check in? It's a pity that the emotionless system did not do what Cheng Cheng said. Cheng Cheng had no choice but to accept this task and teleported it immediately. He opened his arms and took a deep breath. Fresh air immediately filled his body. Cheng Cheng felt very comfortable regardless of the temperature or humidity of the air here. It was definitely a good place to live. Advertisement stepping on the ground, the soil was soft, probably it had just rained, and the ground was full of newly sprouted moss and fresh mushrooms of different colors. These mushrooms grow very fast during thunderstorms. Gulu gulu. In the quiet environment, a stomach growl suddenly sounded. It was then that he suddenly realized that he hadn't had a serious meal in a long time. Recently, in order to save time, he had been eating fairy beans when he was hungry. He almost forgot what meat tasted like. However, at this moment, the woods ahead shook, and a flock of birds flew through the woods and flew into the sky. A huge wild boar, more than 10 meters tall, rushed over. The tusks on both sides of the wild boar's mouth were extremely hard, breaking down trees one after another. Cheng Cheng was instantly happy and praised. It seems that the harvest is destined to be good on this island. I just said I was hungry, and now food is delivered to my door. I just happened to bring these wild boars to the Empress. They should all be happy too. The mushroom is covering my face, so I can't see it. Cheng Cheng grinned, holding his sword across his body, and said softly, "Brother Yi Boar, then I won't be polite to you." Looking at the weirdo whose body was covered with mushrooms, Margaret murmured, "She is really energetic, she must be a powerful warrior." Those beasts that wanted to get close to Cheng Cheng felt the murderous aura of Zhenhai's sword and immediately turned away without hesitation. They knew that their lives were more important than food. After the women in the village heard that Margaret and the three of them had brought back a weirdo, they all gathered around. Dozens of women were chattering and talking about Cheng Cheng, who was covered in mushrooms. Not long after, the two female warriors, who were extremely familiar with this forest, quickly came to Cheng Cheng's side. The huge wild boar, drooling from the corner of its mouth, rushed over without slowing down at all, and the ground shook. "Yufalandola, please excuse me, we have to move this person back to the village quickly for treatment. We can't let the mushrooms continue to grow." Margaret, who was about to take action, accidentally saw Cheng Cheng's handsome face, plopped down and sat back on the ground, her face flushed, and she murmured. However, the moment Cheng Cheng drew out the Zhenhai sword, the wild boar's eyes instantly turned to panic. The 2 feet behind it no longer ran hard, but rubbed hard against the ground, trying to stop. On the other side of the jungle, 3 female warriors from Daughter's Island were running quickly in the direction of the smoke. They were usually responsible for guarding the island. At this moment, both of them were confident of winning, thinking that they must be the hunter. Then Cheng Cheng skillfully lit the bonfire, set up a barbecue stall, threaded the pork chops and started grilling. After a while, the aroma of meat filled the air, and the surface of the pork chops was grilled until it was golden and crispy. Advertisement. After drinking and eating, Cheng Cheng didn't know whether he was tired or sleepy, so he stuck the Zhenhai sword beside him and fell asleep regardless. Baradona was the doctor in the village. She signaled for others to stop making noise and be quiet, and then asked Margaret and the others to pull out the mushrooms on Cheng Cheng's body. Why have I never seen her before? Have you seen her before? There are only women on Daughter Island, and outsiders are not allowed to enter at all. These natives have never seen men at all. He immediately realized that he must have eaten the mushroom with mushrooms all over his body. After eating, his whole body will be covered with mushrooms. The mushrooms that grow will continue to absorb the essence in the body. When the essence is exhausted, that person will die. When the sword light flashed vertically and horizontally, and the swift sword slashed the pigs randomly. No, everything around the island is heavily guarded. Even if they were lucky enough to sneak in, they wouldn't be so stupid as to expose their identity by creating such obvious black smoke. However, because the inertia of the forward thrust was too great, it was unable to stop as it was so close to Cheng Cheng, and bumped into Cheng Cheng. After a while, a mountain of pork chops appeared in front of Cheng Cheng. Each pork chop was almost the same size. They were all round in shape with a diameter of 3 meters and a thickness of about 30 centimeters. They were neatly placed on the rocks. She is so beautiful. Aflandora, who was nearly 5 meters tall, shyly agreed. With Cheng Cheng's small body, it was nothing for her to carry on her back. What's wrong with this child? Why is he covered in mushrooms? How strange. Afterwards, Cheng Cheng took out a few bottles of wine from the space ring and ate and drank them. Anyway, go quickly. No matter who it is, we have to ask clearly. The yellow-haired Margaret first noticed the broad sword that was stuck on the ground and exuded infinite murderous aura. Then she took a closer look at Cheng Cheng and realized that it was a person. Stabby looked at Cheng Cheng, who was covered in mushrooms all over his body, and hesitated, wondering what it was. Cheng Cheng, who was a little tired of eating meat, saw some fresh mushrooms on the ground, so he grabbed some mushrooms and made them into skewers and grilled them. Another graceful Margaret, wearing extremely cool clothes, said firmly. Baradona said calmly, take her to have a bath. Just wash her body and she'll be fine. The 3 of them returned to the village as quickly as possible. The buildings here were primitive and the streets were exceptionally clean and tidy without a trace of dust. The burly Stabby said, it's not like those people parked offshore secretly landed, right? In that case, we have to call for reinforcements immediately. Not long after, all the mushrooms on Cheng Cheng's body were pulled out, but there were still traces of the mushrooms on his body. Chapter 185. Beautiful man. Why do I feel that she is more beautiful than Lady Snake? Oh my god, I'm going to faint. After Margaret had this idea in her mind, she suddenly became angry. She is obviously the most beautiful lady in the world. What's wrong with me? He was actually disloyal to Lady Snake. But Margaret hugged Cheng Cheng's neck tighter, her body pressed against Cheng Cheng's back, and she touched Cheng Cheng's chest. Why was it so hard? Why is she flat-chested? Dr. Belladonna just wanted to reprimand Margaret, but when he saw Cheng Cheng's beautiful and handsome face, he swallowed his retort and blushed without saying anything more. The other women around him also looked at Cheng Cheng with their eyes shining brightly. This Daughter Island is located in the windless zone next to the Grand Line. Because there are giant Poseidons in the windless zone, ordinary ships cannot enter the waters near Daughter Island. Even marine cannot sail into the Daughter Island because of an agreement with the Empress. Within 3 kilometers of the island, so it is almost a paradise isolated from the world. The women here are from the 9 Snakes tribe, a fighting nation. All women can draw bows and shoot arrows, and the arrows are also wrapped with armed domineering energy, which is extremely powerful. They were born as warriors and were trained to carry all the labor force on one shoulder. Even after pregnancy, they only gave birth to girls. Therefore, most people on the island only knew about the existence of men, but they had never seen what a man was. The people on the island are open-minded and informal. Under normal circumstances, they will take a bath directly by the river in the village. Cheng Cheng, who was still unconscious at this moment, was soaking in the river. Margaret and Stabby carefully bathed Cheng Cheng's whole body to remove the remaining traces on his body. More and more women in the village gathered, all wanting to see this stranger who was as handsome as Lady Snake. Margaret wiped Cheng Cheng's body carefully, lathered it with soap, and suddenly shouted. Ah, Dr. Belladonna, there's another one here that I can't get rid of. Margaret tried hard several times, but not only did she not get it off, but she was exhausted. She shook her sore palms, sat down on the shore, and panted. Stobe, you better do it. You are strong. Stabby, who weighed nearly 400 kilograms, waved his arms, which were thicker than Margaret's thighs, clashed his fists, and said boldly, don't worry, leave it to me. Stabby held the thing with one hand, shouted loudly, and with a strong force, he grabbed it and lifted Cheng Cheng up, but he still couldn't get it down. Advertisement. The tired Stabby squatted down in the water, shook his head and said, I can't do it either, or let Euphalandora try, she will definitely be able to do it. The 5-meter-tall Euphalandola standing next to her was a little shy and said softly, can I really do that? Everyone onlookers nodded in agreement, and Margaret affirmed, If you can't do it, then you can only wait for Lady Snake and the others to come back. The giant Euphalandola nodded, plucked up the courage to squat down, and carefully stretched out her hand to pinch, not daring to use too much force. At this time, the onlookers on the river bank moved out of the way, and the gray-haired Granny Niu walked over with a cane, and quickly noticed the naked Cheng Cheng. She squinted her eyes and looked at Cheng Cheng's body carefully. Suddenly her eyes showed a look of fear. She took a few steps back and exclaimed, "Ah, why are there men here?" The others were instantly shocked and took a step back to look at Cheng Cheng as if they were looking at a wild beast. Are all men so good-looking? So this is the man? The girls from the fighting tribes who were watching suddenly changed the topic and started pointing and talking about Cheng Cheng. Euphalandora also looked shocked and subconsciously exerted force. Cheng Cheng screamed in pain and woke up suddenly. After Cheng Cheng woke up from the pain, he found that he was soaking in the river without any clothes on. He was surrounded by women in cool clothes. Almost every woman had a snake wrapped around her body, some around her neck and some around her waist, hovering in between. Cheng Cheng immediately squatted in the water. What is going on? Why am I here? Then I saw that there was nothing abnormal about my body, and then I felt relieved. It would be really aggrieved to die in front of the Empress's house before she left the army. Cheng Cheng suddenly shouted to the sky, "Somersault cloud." Just when others were wondering what the somersault cloud was, the somersault cloud flew very fast from the distant horizon. Then the somersault cloud flew in front of Cheng Cheng and flew high into the sky with Cheng Cheng. Others were very surprised and talked a lot. It turns out that all men have clouds. This is a point of knowledge. I want to record it. Advertisement. Also, there's more. Men are all beautiful, so we should write them down. Cheng Cheng, who was staying above the clouds, felt that he had lost all his face in his life. Even if he tried to put on a ghost mask at this moment, it would be useless. Then Cheng Cheng hurriedly checked the ring on his hand. Fortunately, it was still here. Only Zhenhai's sword had gone somewhere. After casually grabbing a spare piece of clothing from the space ring and putting it on, Cheng Cheng felt a little calmer. Keep telling yourself in your heart, just pretend that what just happened didn't happen. It didn't happen. Everything is just an illusion. Everything is fake. At the same time, he also swore in his heart that he would never eat mushrooms again, including enoki mushrooms, king oyster mushrooms, anything that had anything to do with mushrooms. After Cheng Cheng landed on the ground again, his expression was natural and calm, the corners of his mouth were slightly raised, and he looked more like a tree in the wind, completely no longer embarrassed as before. However, at this moment, everyone else, including Margaret and Stabby, were all holding bows and arrows, drawing the bows like a full moon, and pointing the arrow tips at Cheng Cheng. With just one command, these arrows wrapped with armed domineering energy were enough to seriously injure Cheng Cheng. Cheng Cheng immediately raised his hands and said in a deep voice, "I know you saved me, so I don't want to take action against you. As long as you return the sword to me and leave immediately after meeting Hancock, I will never it will hurt you." Captain Kikyo's eyes were firm and vigilant, and he shouted sternly, "A man who steps into this island is already punished by death. Who do you think you are, and you dare to call Lord Shiji by her first name? I think you are really looking for death. Shoot him to death." Whoosh whoosh. Countless arrows entwined with armed domineering energy were fired together, piercing the air and shooting towards Cheng Cheng like a gust of wind and rain. Cheng Cheng sighed. Such a dense arrow attack could not be avoided even with the hockey of visibility. There was only one choice. He flashed and fled on the rooftops of the village. Every arrow hitting the wall will trigger an explosion, which is much more powerful than ordinary guns. Cheng Cheng didn't want to hurt them, so he could only run away. But when Cheng Cheng jumped all the way to the tallest building on the wall, all the arrows behind him stopped, and no one dared to continue shooting. Just when Cheng Cheng was confused, a single feather arrow flew out by mistake. The roof under Cheng Cheng's feet exploded instantly and he fell down. The guard captain shouted angrily, "Who shot it? Don't you know that the castle tower is where Lady Snake Princess bathes?" Chapter 186 Conqueror's Cheng Cheng fell rapidly and suddenly landed in a spacious bathing pool, causing a splash of water. Congratulations, uncle, for completing the check-in task on Daughter Island. Close black lens bracket. Task reward. Conqueror's domineering spirit. Close black lens bracket. After falling into the water, Cheng Cheng, who had just stood up, heard the familiar voice of the system. Conqueror's domineering. Not bad, not bad. I finally have enough of these three colors of domineering. To put it bluntly, Conqueror's is a kind of king's qualification. People with Conqueror's domineering can intimidate, frighten and stun enemies by relying on their own aura without taking any action. It can also stun opponents who are much weaker than itself, but if it is not controlled well, it will also affect the people around it. Cheng Cheng breathed a sigh of relief. With Conqueror's Haki, if the group of female warriors chased them again, they would have a way to deal with them. All they had to do was make them faint. Cheng Cheng, who had just stood up from the water, felt the warm water in the bath, a few unknown petals floating on the water, and the whole bathroom was filled with the fragrance of flowers. Then Cheng Cheng immediately saw the back of a naked woman in front of him. Her curves were extremely graceful, her skin was like white jade, like condensed fat, and there were sun marks on her back. Cheng Cheng was not too surprised. After all, there would be such a luxurious bathhouse in this small country. I'm afraid there would be no other person besides the Empress. The Empress noticed Cheng Cheng behind her, quickly reacted and squatted into the bath, hiding the marks on her back, and asked coldly, "Did you see that?" Cheng Cheng chuckled and admitted openly, "You mean that mark? I saw it, but don't worry, I won't tell anyone else." The Empress's eyes instantly turned cold. There was a bang, and the bathroom door suddenly opened. The Empress's two sisters broke open the door and rushed in, asking hurriedly. Sister Sama, what happened? Soon they saw Cheng Cheng standing in the center of the bath. The green-haired second sister asked in confusion. It's actually a man. Who is he and why is he here? Advertisement. The Empress walked out of the bath slowly. The third sister put a large bathrobe on the Empress. The Empress said coldly, this man saw my back. The two sisters were instantly shocked. The second sister looked at Cheng Cheng with a gloomy face and said, although you are very handsome, anyone who sees my sister's back must die. Cheng Cheng smiled and said, it's okay, I will be responsible for your eldest sister, and I will not let anyone else see her back except me. The Empress sneered and said, only dead people can keep secrets. Even if I die, I don't want others to see the mark on my back. Since you have seen it, then go and die. Hancock didn't give Cheng Cheng a chance to refute. In an instant, his black hair was flying in the air, his hands made a heart shape, and he shouted softly, I'm infatuated with Don Feng. A series of pink love rays flew quickly towards Cheng Cheng. Cheng Cheng sighed. He only had a simple appreciation for the Empress. Just like a porcelain merchant who encounters an extremely fine piece of porcelain, he would only care for it carefully and have absolutely no intention of desecrating it. And he has no intention of pursuing the Empress. What he wants to do is to let the Empress take the initiative to pursue him. Cheng Cheng just stood there with a motionless smile, letting the pink love ray penetrate his body, and said with a smile, this is of no use to me. Other people will be attracted by your beauty. I am different. I just enjoying it. Without saying a word, the Empress fired another more powerful love ray. But Cheng Cheng's body still moved freely without any changes. The three sisters looked at Cheng Cheng dumbfounded at the same time, and the Empress was furious. Why isn't it petrified? Even if she saw my bathing figure, she still wasn't attracted to me. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Third sister echoed. Yes, sister, it is impossible for such a ridiculous thing to happen. In front of sister's beautiful naked body, no matter whether it is men, women, old or young, they will be confused to death. The second sister said in a deep voice, maybe he is too scared now. Fear is all over his mind. Cheng Cheng's eyes narrowed, golden light floated in his pale golden eyes, and a breathtaking and powerful aura instantly emitted, covering the entire castle tower. A strong wind blew through, and all the windows around the bathroom were blown open, making a crackling sound. Except for Hancock and the three sisters, all the other guards in the castle tower were stunned by Cheng Cheng's conqueror's domineering force and fell to the ground. Advertisement. Cheng Cheng smiled and said, do you still think I'm afraid of you? The green-haired second sister was shocked and said in disbelief, the conqueror's domineering power can only come from the qualifications of a king. The Empress finally looked Cheng Cheng squarely at this moment. Yes, his conqueror's domineering spirit is much higher than that of my concubine, so he has no reason to be afraid. Who are you? What's the plot behind breaking into my lily kingdom without permission? Cheng Cheng walked to the window and slowly touched the window with exquisite lilywood grain carvings. The sunlight outside the window shone into the bathroom through the window, and soon the fog in the bathroom was reduced a lot. At this time, the three Empress sisters could finally see Cheng Cheng's extremely handsome face. Cheng Cheng smiled and said, my name is Cheng Cheng. I was the national advisor of Alabasta before. Now, I am the captain of the Black Justice Pirates. In fact, there was no need for Cheng Cheng to continue to explain. When the Empress saw Cheng Cheng's appearance, she had already made a vague judgment in her heart. However, she waited until Cheng Cheng personally admitted his identity. They were still shocked, and the second sister and the third sister looked horrified and took a step back in fright. Cheng Cheng, the Black Justice Pirates, and the National Master of Arlanbastan. In the past few days, these names have become well known to everyone. Cheng Cheng not only killed 2 Tianlong people in the Sabo Islands, he even led the Black Justice Pirates to confront the 3 marine generals head-on. As a result, one of the 3 seemingly invincible marine generals died, one was seriously injured, and the other was missing. It can be said that the entire army was wiped out, and because of this battle, Cheng Cheng became a great pirate with a bounty of 4.6 billion belly, and was hailed by the world as the 5th emperor to rise in the old world. The Empress' eyes became confused when she looked at Cheng Cheng. Her whole body softened and she lay on the ground, supporting the ground with her arms to prevent her whole body from falling down. Boya Hancock's cheeks turned red. She felt weak all over and had difficulty breathing. She looked at Cheng Cheng in a trance and asked softly and uncertainly, did you really kill 3 celestial dragons? Cheng Cheng looked calm and explained, 2 to be precise. My brother Luffy also killed 1. I came to the island just to wait for my brother, he will probably come here soon. The Empress felt a numbness in her body, and she lay limply on the ground. She didn't care about the beauty in her large bathrobe. She rested her cheek on her slender arm, bit her lip, and choked with tears. How can there be someone as stupid as you in the world? Chapter 187. Don't know whether to laugh or cry. Cheng Cheng sighed slightly, regretting a little. Regret that it was too late to kill the celestial dragon. Although the 3 Boya sisters today have endless scenery and are kings and emperors in the paradise of Daughter Island, they were kidnapped by the celestial dragons as slaves when they were young. They suffered humiliation and were force-fed devil fruit as a way to survive, for fun. Later, Fisher Tiger made a big fuss about Mary Joa, and Hancock and the others took advantage of the chaos to escape and settled on Daughter Island. But because they were all slaves of the celestial dragons, each of them had an unspeakable mark called Hoof of the Celestial Dragon on their backs. As long as this mark is not removed for one day, they cannot get rid of their former status as slaves of the celestial dragons, let alone others on Daughter Island. Otherwise, even the Empress who is loved and supported by everyone will not be able to continue to gain a foothold in this country. Not only that, every time they think about the brand behind it, they will unconsciously recall the tortured slave experience, and they will instantly fall from the beautiful real life into hell. Cheng Cheng walked slowly to the Empress, gently arranged her brocade robe for her, and said softly, "I'm here to help you remove the stigma, so that you can become normal people from now on." The three Boya sisters were shocked at the same time. The second sister looked at Cheng Cheng with wide eyes and asked hurriedly, "What, are you telling the truth? Do you really have a way to remove that mark?" In order to eliminate the mark, the three of them tried hundreds of thousands of methods, and tried almost every possibility they heard. In the end, there was only one answer, which was that it was impossible to eliminate it. Because the mark has been deeply ingrained into the skin, unless the skin is completely reborn, any medicine will be useless. The Empress's eyes were filled with tears, and the tears that had just stopped flowed down her cheeks uncontrollably again, and she cried into tears. Her shoulders hunched and twitched as she sobbed. "I believe you can do it. You dare to kill even Tianlong people. I believe everything. If you really help our three sisters eliminate that mark, I am willing to marry you as my wife and concubine. From now on, you are the Emperor of Amazon Lily Kingdom, and I am willing to serve you for the rest of my life." As soon as these words were spoken, even the second sister and the third sister did not refute, but looked at the Empress with some worry. Cheng Cheng smiled calmly, golden light flashed in his hand, and the great holy grail appeared in his hand. Advertisement Cheng Cheng, who dared to risk the world's disapproval and kill two Tianlong people this time, gave her too much hope. Although she said firmly to the two sisters, she was not sure in her heart. At this moment, time seemed to have stood still. She didn't know how much time had passed, and she was a little afraid to open her eyes and see the comforting eyes of her two sisters. The Empress opposite took off her clothes without thinking, and her large bathrobe slid down her shoulders, revealing her white and tender body like a work of art. Her black hair hung straight down around her waist, covering the Dragon Man's mark. The water of life in the Great Holy Grail is now only half, especially after his killing of two celestial dragons was known to everyone around the world. For 3 consecutive days, the water of life filled a large cup every day. In those days, Cheng Cheng poured large glasses of water of life into the phantom spirit tree. Cheng Cheng bent down and patted the Empress' head gently, smiled and said softly, "No problem, then it's a deal. This is obviously the fruit of mind reading, right? The waiting time is always long." Cheng Cheng cursed in his heart, holding back the heat, and said through his teeth, "Turn around." In the palace, there were only 3 sisters, Cheng Cheng and Boya. Next, the Empress issued an order for all the country protecting soldiers to disperse, but did not hold the person who missed the arrow accountable. He was still hesitating in his heart before how to tactfully bring up the idea of dual cultivation with the Empress, but he didn't expect that Hancock himself would actually bring it up. Cheng Cheng made a sword with his fingers, twisted his wrist, and a column of water rose from the barrel, drawing an arc in the air and washing over the Empress' back. Cheng Cheng looked at the Empress and said with a smile, "Why are you still standing there? Take it off." It is indeed impossible for others to remove the imprint, but for him, it is too easy. Hancock's jade-like body suddenly stiffened, and she slowly opened her eyes. Seeing the two sisters, they were crying and laughing at the same time. Suddenly, advertisement Cheng Cheng looked weird. He could see through my thoughts so easily? She had seen this look countless times, and every time she saw it she would be more disappointed. The third sister also comforted, "Yes, eldest sister, let's not have too much hope. Since Cheng Cheng killed the Tianlong people, he is already our benefactor. There is a half-meter high wooden barrel in the Empress's palace. The water in the barrel is the clearest and cleanest mineral water in the Empress spring on the island. Usually only the Empress can enjoy it." The Empress' expression became a little more determined. She could feel the powerful life force in the water. The Empress didn't mind Cheng Cheng's scrutinizing gaze at all, because she couldn't see a trace of obscenity in Cheng Cheng's gaze, but only admiration for her. Without looking, Cheng Cheng poured the remaining half cup of water of life into the wooden barrel. In an instant, the entire room was illuminated by the golden light from the barrel, making it resplendent. The Empress, who was standing with her back to Cheng Cheng, felt a coldness on her back, and the tingling feeling almost made her make a sound. She clenched her hands, and her fingertips lost their color and turned pale because of too much exertion. The Empress was unusually obedient and quickly turned around, only to see another wave rolling in. Then she ordered everyone to leave the palace. No one was allowed to step into the palace without her permission. 3 devil fruits of different colors and shapes have grown on the current fantasy beast spirit tree. The spirit tree itself has also grown to about 2 meters tall, looking even more sacred. The golden light is shining brightly, dyeing all the items in the space ring. A layer of golden light was applied. They all looked at Cheng Cheng nervously and uneasily. Then the Empress gently moved the black hair from her back around her chest, revealing inch by inch the mark of the celestial dragon that she had always regarded as a shame. In the silent palace, the slight crying sounds of the two sisters rang out, which was particularly harsh. As if in response to Cheng Cheng's gaze, the Empress' soft waist twisted slightly, causing waves to surge up above her, causing an uproar. The second sister said, "Sister, don't have too much hope. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. We have tried so many methods and asked so many questions, but nothing works." The 3 sisters all held their breaths. The second sister and the third sister stared at the Empress's back with their eyes fixed on the back, and their hearts beat more and more violently. Chapter 188 My baby. On that day and night, the Empress issued an order, and a banquet was held throughout the country, and the whole country reveled. There is only one reason why the Empress is in such a good mood, and that is that she has found her husband. The women of the entire Lily Kingdom are sincerely happy for the Empress. For a moment, everyone stopped what they were doing. In the next 3 days, they had only one task, which was to drink and eat meat. At night, fireworks exploded in the night sky, colorful, lighting up the entire sky. All the women walked out of their homes, drank happily, sang and danced. People gathered around piles of bonfires, singing and dancing. The whole country was celebrating in the palace, the lights were brightly lit, the strong aroma of wine floated over the whole country, and the fish in the pond seemed to be drunk and floating on the water. The tall Empress wore a bright red silk cheongsam, which highlighted her entire figure. She held Cheng Cheng's arm with her hands in an intimate manner, and her plump breasts held up Cheng Cheng's arm. The two walked on the red carpet together. The Empress was almost a head taller than Cheng Cheng. Hot eyes were cast towards Cheng Cheng. Everyone who saw Cheng Cheng's appearance exclaimed in surprise. Everyone agreed that except Cheng Cheng, no one else seemed to be worthy of their snake. Lord Ji. Cheng Cheng didn't care about the eyes of everyone. After all, after so many years, he had actually gotten used to it. Feeling the turbulent waves of the Empress, he wanted to grab her immediately. The palace was abuzz with excitement. In order to express her gratitude to Margaret, Stabby, and Euphlandora who saved Cheng Cheng's life, the Empress also gave special permission for the 3 of them to join the 9 Snakes Pirates. At this moment, several female warriors, led by Margaret and the other 3, gathered in front of Cheng Cheng with excited faces. Sir, tomorrow I will tell the whole world that you will succeed me as the new emperor. From now on, the 2 of us will live on this island and ignore Marine's orders. After Cheng Cheng read it, the newspaper in his hand was shattered into pieces and he snorted coldly. After more than a dozen of them gathered in front of Cheng Cheng, Margaret swallowed hard and slowly squatted down, pointed at the object, and asked softly. Advertisement, but I have no interest in this kind of thing, so I don't bother to go. If Marine really wants to attack Girls Island because of this, I don't care. Although the others were a little disappointed, they still obeyed Master Shiji's orders, because Master Shiji was like heaven to them. Cheng Cheng looked up at the sky. The night sky was filled with stars. He didn't know if Ace could still see the night sky like this. He said solemnly. Ace is my brother. I must save him first. Cheng Cheng looked helpless and could only feel sad for these women who had never seen the world. He puffed up his chest and said proudly. You said this, that is my treasure, even more important than life. Everyone cheered with excitement, thankful that they had learned a new knowledge point. The Empress bent over and pressed her plump breasts against Cheng Cheng's back, squeezing them out of shape. She placed her mouth next to Cheng Cheng's ear and whispered softly. Cheng Cheng said extremely generously. I can't take this down, but I can show it to you. It's not like I didn't let you see it. So they have always been curious about what it is. Even if they collectively asked Granny knew, they still didn't get the answer. Boya Hancock said softly. I heard that the world government is going to execute Portgas d'Ace, the captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates. Cheng Cheng sighed, looked at the Empress and said, I can't replace you as the new emperor of this country yet. Margaret swallowed and asked, well, can you take it down so we can see that treasure? You don't know that there is a Marine Lieutenant General waiting for me outside the island, and he dares to threaten me that if I don't accept Marine's forced summons, I will abandon my status as 7 warlords of the sea. I have killed 2 Marine generals. I thought it would be enough to scare you, but I didn't expect you would dare to start a war. In this case, I can only stay with you until the end. The Empress's already flushed cheeks instantly turned red, as if she could squeeze out water with just a pinch. She breathed rapidly and looked at her future husband with blurred eyes. Even so, all of them still had a big doubt in their hearts. They never pulled it out. What on earth was it? The Empress looked nervous and asked, Husband, why is this? Advertisement, however, with her original weak strength, it was impossible to join the 9 Snakes Pirates. Now that her dream has come true, she is undoubtedly the happiest. But compared to you, my husband, he is of course worlds apart. Margaret was especially excited. People all over the country were proud to join the 9 Snakes Pirates, and her dream since she was a child was to join the 9 Snakes Pirates and go to sea with Lady Snake to fight for the country. Therefore, in a rage, I petrified everyone on the Marine battleship. The leading Marine Lieutenant General Mole was a bit bloody. He only escaped the disaster by the pain of inserting the dagger into his palm. Now that my husband is on the island, I have nothing to be afraid of. Cheng Cheng stopped immediately and sighed in his heart. What was supposed to come was coming. Since the 7 warlords of the sea have now begun to be forcibly summoned, it seems that the news of Ace's execution should have been made public. The eyes of other people behind Margaret were also focused on that position, and their eyes were full of curiosity. At this moment, everyone seemed to feel that Cheng Cheng's body was radiating endless golden light, shining in their eyes. But at this time, the Empress stepped forward with her slender long white legs, opened her arms to block Cheng Cheng, and said coldly, The Dingai Divine Needle belongs to me alone, and no one of you is allowed to look at it from now on. The Empress looked shocked at first, and then immediately said without hesitation, I am going too. My husband's brother is also my relative. Cheng Cheng and the Empress walked together and came to a pool and sat down slowly. The Empress stood behind Cheng Cheng and pressed Cheng Cheng's shoulders gently, not too hard or too hard. Cheng Cheng frowned and asked, Do you know the reason? As he said this, he was about to take out the treasure to scare these female monsters. Next, Cheng Cheng immediately asked someone to get the latest newspaper. On the front page, it was clearly written that Ace has the identity of demon blood. At the same time, it was publicly announced that Ace would be executed at Marine headquarters in Marineland a week later. The spring water in the pool behind him was boiling and rolling, as if it was boiling. Your Majesty, I would like to ask, what exactly is this thing? Chapter 189 Meeting Cheng Cheng, who was extremely angry, grabbed the Empress water-like waist, lifted her on his shoulders, and walked into the palace hall with great swagger. As he walked, he tore the bright red brocade cheongsam on the Empress's body. There was not a lot of fabric in the first place. Before reaching the main hall, there was not much left, and spring suddenly appeared. A night of fish and dragon dance, Cheng Cheng was deeply involved and couldn't extricate himself. The next day, people all over the world were almost starving to death. The Marine headquarters announced the execution of Ace, whose true identity is One Piece Roger's son, before everyone started a heated discussion on the matter. The Black Justice Pirates issued a notice to the Marine headquarters and issued a bold threat. If Ace was not released immediately, the Black Justice Pirates would definitely destroy Marineland and make the entire Marine headquarters bury Ace alone. Ever since Cheng Cheng, the captain of the Black Justice Pirates, killed 2 celestial dragons in the Sabo Islands and defeated the 3 marine generals, no one has doubted the strength and courage of the Black Justice Pirates. The whole world was in turmoil for a while, as if everyone was waiting for that great battle. Marine headquarters, Marineland. There was silence in the office on the top floor of the building, and the air was terrifyingly gloomy. Fleet Admiral Sengoku frowned, and he had not seen his smiling face for several days. Almost all the generals above the Marine Lieutenant General were around the long table, with solemn faces. Some who had no place to sit stood upright without saying a word. Immediately in front of Fleet Admiral Sengoku is Kizaru, who was covered in straps. During the Battle of the Sabo Islands, he was the only general who returned to the Marine headquarters alive. At this moment, Kizaru looked sluggish, coughing out a mouthful of blood from time to time. His face was still frighteningly pale, without a trace of blood, except for his eyes, which were full of energy. Next to each other on the other side were the new Marine generals Momosagi Gion and Cha Dugai. The two of them sat opposite each other. They were the very few generals in the conference room who had a fighting spirit on their faces. Garp moved a chair and sat against the wall, his eyes closed as if sleeping. So far in the meeting, he has not said a word or made any remarks. Fleet Admiral Sengoku tapped the table with one hand, making a rhythmic sound, looked around the crowd and sighed. Advertisement. You have all heard the words of the Black Justice Pirates. Their attitude is very resolute, and we all know that their strength is not weaker than any of the 4 emperors. In addition, don't forget that Ace is not only Cheng Cheng's younger brother, but also the captain of the 2nd division of the Whitebeard pirate ship. Based on my understanding of Whitebeard, even if Cheng Cheng does not invite him to join the battle, this person will an extremely determined stance to save Ace. Even if we summon all the Shichibukai, the gap in strength is still a bit big. Once a war starts, it will definitely be a lose-lose situation. Whether it is war or peace talks, please give your opinion. This is related to the face of our entire marine. Everyone has the right to speak. If you all remain silent, this meeting will not be able to proceed. Report. There was an extremely rapid voice, and the receptionist who was responsible for delivering information ran over. During this period, warring states had specially instructed them that as long as there was an emergency, they could ignore the rules and report information as quickly as possible. The receptionist was breathing heavily and sweating profusely. He ran to the conference room door and bent down to hold onto the doorframe. When he saw all the big shots staring at him, he hurriedly said, Whitebeard, 4 Emperors. Whitebeard also made an announcement, exactly the same as Cheng Cheng's statement, saying that if we don't let Ace go, the entire Marineland will be turned upside down. And he said it. At this point, the thin receptionist hesitated a little, as if he was considering whether he should say it or not. Warring States said angrily, What else did you say? Tell me the exact words. The receptionist Zan He said, Whitebeard also said that Warring States should know that he has the ability to do it. Fleet Admiral Sengoku leaned on his back weakly, waved his hand, indicating to the receptionist that he could leave, and then looked at everyone and said softly, Look, after just saying that, Whitebeard and the others have already expressed their stance. Of course Whitebeard has this ability. Even though he is old now, his earthquake fruit can definitely cause disasters in the world. If you really offend him, the whole world may not be able to be quiet in the future. Now, the Marine headquarters is at a time when talents are withering. 2 of the 5 emperors have already made their attitudes clear. Once a war starts, it will definitely be a hard battle. Garp still crossed his arms and leaned back in his chair with his eyes closed to relax, as if this war had nothing to do with him. The pale Kizaru raised his head and just said the word, war, when he coughed violently and spit out a mouthful of blood on the table. Advertisement T. Dolphin Jaju chuckled and said, The Black Justice Pirates are indeed powerful and cannot be underestimated, but the Whitebeard Pirates are not to be feared. Whitebeard is already old now, and he has long heard that he needs a full body every day. With a full intravenous drip and an oxygen tube, I could barely survive. It would be ridiculous if we, Marine, were frightened by such a dying person. Besides, now that we have ordered the forced summoning of Shichibukai, we may not have no chance of winning. Lieutenant General Marine, who was standing, shouted loudly, Marine's justice cannot be trampled on. If we compromise today, it will inevitably cause the entire Marine to lose face. Other enthusiastic young generals shouted at the same time, for justice. Garp, who had his eyes closed and concentrated, had a sneer on his lips. Warring States shook his head slightly and sighed. These young people had never seen Whitebeard, so naturally they didn't know how scary Whitebeard was. In his opinion, no matter how talented Cheng Cheng was, he was still a child, and he was far less scary than Whitebeard. The power of the Cheng Cheng fruit is definitely not what those young people can imagine. But thinking about the face of the entire marine, this war is still inevitable. The world government, the celestial dragons of Holy Land Marijoya, and the 5 elders will never agree to release Ace. Ever since Cheng Cheng killed the celestial dragons in Akainu and defeated Aokiji, the entire world government and marine had lost face and become the laughingstock of the entire world, with everyone mocking them wantonly. Marine also needs an absolutely crushing battle to regain his majesty, in order to deter the pirates who have begun to move around. Snapped. Warring States slammed the table and stood up. Just as he was about to express his decision, another urgent report interrupted his words. Panting heavily and sweating profusely, the receptionist rushed to the door of the conference room and said hurriedly. The red-haired Marines also announced that they would form a permanent alliance with the Black Justice Pirates and advance and retreat together with the Black Justice Pirates. The red-haired Marine also asked Fleet Admiral to give him a face and released Ace. At the same time, Sabo, the second in command of the Revolutionary Army, issued a statement to the world that if Ace was not released, he would personally lead 5,000 elite Revolutionary Army troops to attack Marineland. Garp, who was lying on a chair with his eyes closed to relax, opened his eyes and smiled from ear to ear. Warring States sighed, pushed the door open and said calmly, I'm going to go to Marijoya right now. Chapter 190 Brother-in-law of the Holy Land of Marijoya, the seat of the World Government Headquarters, is located between the first half and the second half of the Grand Line, the summit of the Red Continent, and is one of the 2 routes to the New World. The 5 elders, who hold the highest power in the world, live on the top floor of Marijoya, overlooking all living beings. The kings of the countries that join the world government come here every 5 years to hold a world conference, and only the celestial dragons are eligible to live here. After Fleet Admiral Sengoku landed on the Red Continent alone, he walked with heavy steps to the top of Marijoya Palace. The Tianlong people they met along the way looked at Sengoku with cold eyes, not to mention contempt, but also without the slightest respect or awe. After all, in their eyes, the purpose of all Marines' existence was to protect them. They Tianlong people are the creators of this world, and they are the most noble existences in this world. Sengoku's face was gloomy. He rarely came to the Holy Land Marijoya. Every time he came here, he felt indignant when he saw those self-righteous Tianlong people. Therefore, as long as it was not necessary, Sengoku preferred to stay in the marine headquarters and do nothing out of sight. Net. Despite this, he still firmly believed in the orders of the world government and never had the slightest doubt. After arriving at the top door of the palace without any obstruction, Warring States took a deep breath and pushed open the door. Inside the palace, 5 old people were drinking tea and reading newspapers on the sofa, leisurely and contentedly, when they saw that the Warring States period was coming. Among them, the only bald old man wearing a large white robe and not wearing black clothes, holding a huge samurai sword in his arms, greeted Sengoku with a smile. We are rare visitors. I didn't expect that Sengoku would take the initiative to see us. Let me guess, is it because of the Black Justice Pirates recently? Or is it because of Whitebeard? After Sengoku walked slowly in front of everyone, he bowed slightly to the 5 elders. Gate of Opening said straight to the point. I think the 5 elders must have heard about it, the Black Justice Pirates, the Whitebeard Pirates, the Red Pirates, the Fat Pirates and the 4 forces of the Revolutionary Army have made their stance clear. We are asked to release Ace. If we insist on executing Ace, it will inevitably trigger a war of unprecedented scale, in which the entire Malinfondo may be destroyed. Not to mention the 3 parties other than the Black Justice Pirates. Currently, according to reliable information, there are nearly 40 members of the Black Justice Pirates, almost all of whom have extremely powerful Phantom Beast Devil Fruits. Advertisement Captain Cheng Cheng's Devil Fruit ability is unknown. It is suspected to be a space ability type. Its own powerful strength is enough to compete with any one of the 4 emperors. He beheaded Akainu and after defeating Aokiji, Marine's strength had been severely damaged. The old man with long white hair shawl and a white beard slowly put down the teacup in his hand, looked at Fleet Admiral Warring States with cold eyes and asked, "What do you mean by that?" The other 4 old men were also gloomy, looking at Warring States with unkind eyes. Sengoku took a deep breath and said firmly, "The Black Pirates are powerful, why don't we recruit them for my use? Now that they haven't arrived in the New World, we can just do what we did with the Shichibukai. Implement an imperial edict against the Black Justice Pirates, and even give them a stronger title than the 4 emperors. In this way, Ace's life not only avoids war, but also gives them a powerful ally. All in all, this person can only be a friend, not an enemy." Elder Huzzy G suddenly slapped his palm on the table, and the entire table turned into powder. However, the cup on the table was suspended in the air without being affected at all. He narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "Is the entire Marine afraid, or are you, the Marine Fleet Admiral, afraid? Do you know that the Black Justice Pirates killed 2 celestial dragons and committed a heaven-defying crime in this world? If our world government extends an olive branch to people like this to resolve grudges, where is the majesty of our world government? Where is the noble status of the Tianlong people? If this precedent is set, then any powerful force in the future can kill the celestial dragons at will. Have you ever thought about this?" Sengoku clenched his fists and insisted, "I just want to avoid war and make Marine more powerful." The bald old man holding the sword in his arms spoke softer. He stood up from the soft sofa, wandered barefoot on the ground, and said seriously, "Sengoku, I understand what you mean, but you also need to know that war is sometimes unavoidable. Blindly avoiding war will only bring about greater war. Akainu is indeed dead, but Aokiji is not dead. The life card is still safe and sound, and people from CP0 are currently searching for it all over the world. In addition, you don't need to worry about the red-haired pirates. We will naturally arrange people to contain them, and we will definitely not let them cross the Red Earth continent and come to Marinefondo. Advertisement Whitebeard is already old. As long as he really dares to come to Malinfondo, this will be his graveyard. As for those in the Revolutionary Army, they are just a ragtag group of people and should not be feared. Warring States asked. What about the Black Justice Pirates? They have close to 40 Phantom Beast Devil Fruit users. Cheng Cheng, the strongest person, of course I can deal with them myself, but ordinary lieutenant generals cannot deal with those members. The bald man continued. I will ask the doctor to mobilize 100 pacifists and place them on the coast of Marinefondo. In addition, have you forgotten one, our marine hero Garp? The old man with white hair and shawl scolded. Warring States, don't forget your identity. Sengoku straightened up and sighed. Where is the marine hero Garp? Once the war starts, as long as Garp doesn't attack me, I will be grateful to his 18th generation ancestor. Can I still expect him to participate in the war? I just hope that it will go as smoothly as you said. Stop the red hair. Haha, who can stop that guy? In the end, Warring States just sighed heavily again and said in a deep voice, yes, if you insist on fighting, then fight. We, Warring States, don't fear death. After saying that, Warring States turned and left without hesitation. In the afternoon of that day, Marine Headquarters issued a public statement, summoning all lieutenant generals and branches around the world to immediately abandon their tasks and go to Marine Headquarters, Marine Vendo. Daughter Island, Seaside. The Empress changed into a pink backless cheongsam, revealing a large area of her back as white as jade, and bent down to give Cheng Cheng a gentle pat on her lower back. After a night of tossing, even Cheng Cheng, who had amazing physical strength, felt some pain in his back and legs, but the Empress became even more energetic and charming. In front of others, the Empress still looked arrogant and cold, but in front of Cheng Cheng, she turned into an obedient little sheep, ready for you to pick and choose. Cheng Cheng and the others had been waiting here all morning. Just when he thought he had calculated the date wrongly, a small figure flew over in the distant sky. The Empress' eyes flashed as she looked at the figure in the distance with great joy, and said softly, my brother-in-law is finally here.